Chapter 2262. To a cultivator, losing confidence was the scariest thing. Once one lost confidence, one's cultivation would stagnate and be stuck in a bottleneck. After all, he had cultivated for so long, yet he was easily defeated by someone else. This was something that he could not accept. Yin Yuan's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. He suddenly understood that the kindness he had shown to Bailey Hongzhuang before the competition had saved him. If her attitude was as hateful as Shun Xiuhan's, she was afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang would have easily defeated her. However, after knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang still had more cards up her sleeve, Yin Yuan also began to look forward to it. He didn't know how far Bailey Hongzhuang could go. If Bailey Hongzhuang could defeat Shun Xiuhan, it would be shocking. When Shun Xiuhan saw that his cultivation level had been suppressed to level 5 by Bailey Hongzhuang, a trace of panic flashed across his cold and arrogant face. He had never encountered such a situation before. Bailey Hongzhuang had also never displayed such ability in the previous competitions. Could it be that this is the true power of the blood aura? Shun Xiuhan said slowly. Looks like you're not stupid. The power of the blood aura is indeed not bad. However, if you want to defeat me with the power of the blood aura, that's still a fantasy. Shun Xiuhan snorted. At this moment, he had already put away his arrogant attitude and turned to face Bailey Hongzhuang. He regarded Bailey Hongzhuang as a real opponent. In the next moment, Shun Xiuhan's cultivation level increased again in front of everyone's shocked eyes. Level 6 of Green Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. She did not expect Shun Xiuhan to have hidden his true strength. In that case, Shun Xiuhan's true strength had reached level 8 of Green Realm. This level of strength was indeed impressive. Even if you have suppressed my cultivation level, you are still no match for me. Shun Xiuhan's eyes were cold. He had wanted to preserve his strength and only reveal it when he met Xiao Feilin and the rest. He did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang's blood aura to force him to reveal his true strength. If not for Bailey Hongzhuang's arrogance with the blood aura, he would not have done so. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders indifferently, her face showing a bit of impatience. Do you have to say such nonsense every time you fight with someone? Do you think I'll give up just because you say a few words? I, Bailey Hongzhuang, am not scared. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Shun Xiuhan's eyes were cold again. His foot slammed down, and his figure was like lightning as he directly attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. Shun Xiuhan's hands were in the shape of claws. The bones of his fingers were hard and sharp. It was as if he would take one's life with just one claw. The sharp claws brought about a fierce wind that rapidly enlarged in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. With just one look, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that Shun Xiuhan had been practicing his claw technique for a long time. If not, it would not be so terrifying. Just as Shun Xiuhan's attack was about to touch Bailey Hongzhuang, the glazed sword appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had a certain level of confidence in her physical strength, she still had to be on guard against such a powerful claw technique. Ding! Chapter 2263. Hearing this voice, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes couldn't help but flash with shock. It seemed that her judgment was right. Shun Xiuhan's claws were as hard as iron. If she were to fight with him without any preparation, her hands would have been crippled. Ding, ding, ding. Shun Xiuhan's claws turned into sharp weapons and attacked Bailey Hongzhuang at lightning speed. He had been practicing claw techniques since he was young. Among his peers, his claw techniques were unparalleled. This claw technique was one of his greatest weapons. The sound of metal clashing could be heard. Shun Xiuhan's claws were as fast as lightning and as agile as a snake. It was impossible to guard against. When the claws and the glass sword collided, sparks flew everywhere. It was terrifying. Shun Xiuhan's attack was like a storm, not giving Bailey Hongzhuang any chance to rest. Once Bailey Hongzhuang relaxed, Shun Xiuhan would take advantage of the situation. Bailey Hongzhuang's mental strength was 100% focused, and she used shape-shifting skill from time to time. Shun Xiuhan's reputation as the top expert in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall was not undeserved. Whether it was his fighting skills or the density of his elemental energy, it was far from what an ordinary cultivator could compare to. If Bailey Hongzhuang had not cultivated shape-shifting skill to a certain level, she would have been outshone by Shun Xiuhan's terrifying and fierce attacks. The two figures were like a whirlwind. The crowd could only see the red and white colors intertwining in the spreading flames. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be shocked. If it was not for the blood aura field that suppressed Shun Xiuhan's strength to such a level, she would not be his opponent. Shun Xiuhan's fighting skills were definitely not comparable to an ordinary Green Realm level 8 cultivator. His fighting skills had probably reached Green Realm level 9. Shun Xiuhan's claw technique is getting more and more terrifying. If it's close combat, I'm afraid very few people are his opponent. Xiao Feiyu narrowed her eyes. She had experienced Shun Xiuhan's claw technique before, but it was obviously not to this extent. This junior sister Bailey's strength is indeed impressive. It is not easy for her to be able to withstand Shun Xiuhan's stormy attacks. The way Xiao Feilin looked at Bailey Hongzhuang gradually changed. Even though he already knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was very talented, it was still very shocking that she could withstand Shun Xiuhan's claw technique. Junior sister Bailey's movement technique is very powerful. If not for the combination of this movement technique, I'm afraid junior sister Bailey would not have been able to withstand it, Yan Bin said slowly. Shun Xiuhan's attacking style was completely different from how he usually looked. He usually looked cold and aloof, but once he started fighting, he did not give his opponent any chance to breathe. Therefore, cultivators were most unwilling to encounter such opponents. They were simply too tiring. However, Yan Bin was an exception. He was a battle maniac, and his favorite opponent was Shun Xiuhan's fighting style. It was precisely because of this that he usually liked to spar with Shun Xiuhan. However, this guy did not give him any face every time, which made him very unhappy. As the battle progressed, Bailey Hongzhuang increasingly felt that she could not fight Shun Xiuhan in close combat anymore. Otherwise, it would be very disadvantageous for her if this continued. White Lion and Bailey Hongzhuang could be said to be of the same mind. After Bailey Hongzhuang made such a decision, White Lion instantly pounced on Shun Xiuhan. Seeing White Lion's sudden attack, Shun Xiuhan could only quickly retreat to avoid White Lion's attack. Chapter 2264. White Lion had no intention of fighting Shun Xiuhan head-on. Hence, when Shun Xiuhan turned to face him, he turned to the other side. White Lion's strength had reached a green state, but there was still a large gap between him and Shun Xiuhan. Furthermore, White Lion was unable to unleash its full potential against someone like Shun Xiuhan, who was too strong in close combat. When Shun Xiuhan saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had already unleashed her martial technique on the other side of the stage, he was a little depressed, but there was nothing he could do. His close combat skills had always been very strong, so most of the time, he would be able to finish off his opponents in close combat. He would always seize the opportunity and not give his opponents any chance to escape. Unfortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang had White Lion's help and managed to escape. Shun Xiuhan's depressed expression disappeared in a flash, and he quickly returned to normal. Towering Heaven Demon Lotus. Bailey Hongzhuang unleashed her martial technique very quickly. With a thought, the Towering Heaven Demon Lotus attacked Shun Xiuhan directly. Seeing this, Shun Xiuhan quickly formed a seal in his hand. Following that, a huge black claw formed in midair and emitted a powerful and terrifying force. Black Netherworld Claw. Bang! The two attacks quickly collided in midair and exploded with an extremely tyrannical force. The entire sky was filled with a terrifying Yuan Qi storm. In an instant, the wind and clouds surged, and the sky above the stage was covered by the two attacks. Even the sunlight could not shine in. Very quickly, the two attacks dissipated, and the two of them did not hesitate to unleash their martial techniques again. Shun Xiuhan was in a bad mood. With the difference in strength between him and Bailey Hongzhuang, it should be a simple matter to finish off Bailey Hongzhuang. However, he had been entangled with Bailey Hongzhuang for so long, and this was not a good thing. To Bailey Hongzhuang, the longer the battle went on, the more advantageous it would be for her. On the contrary, the more disadvantageous it would be for Shun Xiuhan. He did not want to become Bailey Hongzhuang's stepping stone, so he had to end the battle quickly. Monstrous yuan power surged out of Shun Xiuhan's body and flowed into his hands. If one were to observe carefully, they would notice that Shun Xiuhan's brows were constantly furrowed. The suppression of the blood chi field made him feel very unhappy. Originally, he was able to display a powerful strength, but now, all of it was suppressed. Even the power of his martial skill was suppressed. It was really unpleasant. Bailey Hongzhuang felt Shun Xiuhan's elemental energy vibrations, and her heart sank. Shun Xiuhan's ability was indeed extraordinary. Even though Shun Xiuhan's martial technique had yet to take form, she could feel that this martial technique was very powerful. It was definitely an Earth-grade martial technique. If she guessed correctly, this should be the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's Earth-rank martial skill. Vermilion Bird Spirit. Following Shun Xiuhan's cold shout, fiery red energy suddenly erupted from behind him. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, the fiery red energy gradually transformed into a fiery red vermilion bird. With the appearance of this vermilion bird, the temperature of the entire martial arts stage instantly rose, wave after wave of heat waves. This is the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's Earth-grade martial technique, Vermilion Bird Spirit. As a new disciple, Bailey Hongzhuang has yet to have the opportunity to learn the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's Earth-grade martial technique. It looks like Bailey Hongzhuang is at a disadvantage. Chapter 2265. Following the appearance of the Vermilion Bird Spirit, Shun Xiuhan's entire body seemed to be covered in a layer of flaming armor, majestic and imposing. The raging flames set off his handsome, cold, and arrogant face, giving him a sense of nobility. Burial of the Sea of Flames. Bailey Hongzhuang displayed the Burial of the Sea of Flames at the same time, and a surging fiery red energy swept out in an instant. The temperature on the stage rose again. Like a sea of flames, the heat waves assaulted everyone. The disciples on the spectators' stand were already sweating from the heat. Both of their martial skills were actually flames, and the air was completely distorted by the heat waves. The two types of red contended against each other in the air, then crashed into each other. Boom! An extremely ear-piercing sound of a sonic boom reverberated, mixed with a shocking heat wave, like fireworks exploding in the air. Sparks flew in all directions as energy surged wildly. The protective barrier lost control once again, rippling unevenly, as if it would explode at any time. The entire sky had been swept up by the energy storm, and the tongues of flames were swallowing, burning everything that could be burned. In the eyes of the crowd, they could only see the billowing flames and could not see the figures within. This total was even more terrifying and shocking than when Bailey Hongzhuang and Yin Yuhuan had exchanged blows. Everyone's gaze was focused on the stage. Under the power of the flames, it was very likely that they would be burned. It was also an Earth-grade martial skill, but the power displayed by Shun Xiuhan was much stronger. The heat waves continued to churn, like a dancing fire dragon, sweeping through the air, enjoying the crowd's shocked gazes. After a long while, the aftershock dissipated, and the crowd could see the situation on the stage clearly. With one look, the crowd's expression changed. The originally white and glossy stage had now been burnt into a charred black, and even the stones had signs of melting. Kacha! A soft sound suddenly rang out, and following that, a series of cracking sounds spread out continuously. A crack suddenly appeared in the middle of the stage, and following that, the crack rapidly spread out like a spider's web. In a short span of time, the entire stage had split into pieces. Most importantly, after the stage had split into pieces, it had rapidly turned into powder. It was obvious that the previous competition had completely destroyed the structure of the battling platform. The surrounding disciples couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. This was the power of a powerhouse's attack. The destructive power was astonishing. Then, Everyone's eyes fell on Shun Xiuhan and Bailey Hongzhuang. Even such a sturdy battle stage had been reduced to such a state. He wondered what would happen to Shun Xiuhan and Bailey Hongzhuang. Shun Xiuhan still had a cold expression on his face. His clothes were slightly charred, and there were a few blossoms of blood on his sleeves. However, from his unchanging expression, it could be seen that he was not seriously injured in this confrontation. On the other hand, Bailey Hongzhuang's injuries were much more serious than Shun Xiuhan's. Drip, drip. The sound of blood dripping slowly rang out, dyeing the ground red. Her delicate face had already turned pale, and her aura was much weaker than before. Pucci. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't control the taste of blood in her mouth. She spat out a mouthful of blood, and her whole body became even weaker. Chapter 2266. Bailey Hongzhuang has lost this round. Xiao Feilin sighed. He admired this new junior sister of his. It was rare for her to be able to reach this stage, but it was a pity that her opponent was Shun Xiuhan. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's injuries are serious, Shun Xiuhan's injuries are not light either. No matter what, Bailey Hongzhuang was able to force Shun Xiuhan to this stage. It is not easy. Xiao Feilin's eyes shone with admiration. As a 19-year-old girl, Bailey Hongzhuang could already look down on everyone. Shun Xiuhan's cold and arrogant gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. I've already said that you are no match for me. Now admit defeat. The cold voice was a bit disdainful, but in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears, there was a bit of pity. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips suddenly curled into a smile. No matter what you say, you always give people the feeling that you are asking for a beating. She knew very well that Shun Xiuhan's words were not out of kindness, but because he did not want to waste too much time on her. But it was this kind of high and mighty attitude that Bailey Hongzhuang could not stand. So what? Shun Xiuhan's gaze turned even colder. You are no match for me. Do you expect me to respect you? What a laughable ego. At this point, Shun Xiuhan was no longer polite. He had always despised the self-righteous ego of some cultivators. Was there any meaning in protecting that laughable ego when they did not have the ability? So what if they wanted to protect it? Without the ability, they did not have the right to protect it. Losers should accept this result. As Shun Xiuhan's words fell, the expressions of many cultivators present turned ugly. Shun Xiuhan's words are too much. In any case, Bailey Hongzhuang is still a girl. Isn't his words the same as ruthlessly trampling on a person's pride? I was wondering why Shun Xiuhan was usually so arrogant. It turns out that he looks down on everyone. Only some idiots would think that Shun Xiuhan is charming. In fact, he looks down on her from the bottom of his heart. Shun Xiuhan is really just standing there and talking. When he was Bailey Hongzhuang's age, he did not have the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang. Xia Jiqing and the others were also angry at this moment. This guy's words were really asking for a beating. Listening to Shun Xiuhan's harsh and mocking words, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. This guy was cold-blooded and ruthless. Have I ever told you that you look like you need a spanking? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly asked. Shun Xiuhan frowned slightly. In fact, no one had ever dared to say such things to him. For people who are asking for a beating, they can only be dealt with. A guy like you looks down on others just because you have some strength. Don't you think about it? Among all the cultivators in the Shengxian continent, who are you? You don't know how those who have their egos trampled on by you feel, do you? Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was bewitching and charming. She was like a demon, but her eyes were suddenly as sharp as a knife. But very soon, you will know what kind of feeling it is. Chapter 2267. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang like this, the three beasts couldn't help but look at each other. Based on their understanding of their master, when their master showed such an expression, it meant that she was angry. With their master's calm temperament, ordinary things wouldn't make her angry. However, Shun Xiuhan's words really made them unhappy. Not only was their master angry, but they also looked at Shun Xiuhan with displeasure. They didn't know where this guy came from. It was fine if he thought highly of himself, but he was actually so arrogant. If they didn't teach him a lesson, it wouldn't be their character. Bailey Hongzhuang's deep eyes flashed with a dazzling light, and an unusual aura exploded from her body. Shen Xiuhan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, and his gaze changed a little. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang looked very different from before. However, Shen Xiuhan was only surprised for a moment, and he didn't take it to heart. If you continue to resist stubbornly, it's futile. The courage of an ignorant person is meaningless. It will only make you more miserable. Shen Xiuhan had already determined that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't his opponent. No matter how angry a cockroach was, it was still a cockroach. It wouldn't affect him at all. On the contrary, the more Bailey Hongzhuang acted like this, the more pitiful Bailey Hongzhuang was. Xiao Feilin and the rest frowned when they heard Shen Xiuhan's increasingly excessive words. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang and Shen Xiuhan had a certain amount of conflict, it shouldn't have reached this stage. Shen Xiuhan is too ruthless. Is this guy deliberately trying to destroy Bailey Hongzhuang's confidence? Xiao Feiyu's expression became serious. Previously, she didn't feel anything, but now she realized that there was something unusual. Following Xiao Feiyu's words, Xiao Feilin and Yin Bin's expressions gradually changed, and their gazes became even more complicated. If Shen Xiuhan's goal is really like this, then it's indeed a little heartless. For cultivators, failure was not scary. What was scary was losing confidence. Shen Xiuhan's words were clearly meant to infuriate Bailey Hongzhuang. Once Bailey Hongzhuang unleashed all her strength and was defeated by Shen Xiuhan, Bailey Hongzhuang would not be able to recover in the future. This battle would become a shadow in her heart that would not dissipate for a long time. I think that's what Shen Xiuhan is planning. Yin Bin was an impatient person. He did not need to think too much about such matters. Shen Xiuhan's actions were already very obvious. Usually, I still think that Shen Xiuhan is a character. Why do I look down on Shen Xiuhan more and more now? To actually use such despicable means on Junior's sister, how despicable. Xiao Feilin and Xiao Feiyu couldn't help but look at Yin Bin. This guy really could say anything on the high platform. Di Beichen and the 5 Palace Masters frowned. They also felt that Shen Xiuhan's actions were inappropriate. However, as long as it wasn't a life-threatening situation, they wouldn't interfere in a battle on the stage. It was just a battle of words between two disciples. It was really not suitable for them to interfere. Chapter 2268. Just as everyone thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would not be able to restrain her temper, Bailey Hongzhuang's face suddenly broke into a puzzling smile. Shen Xiuhan, I didn't expect that with your usual sanctimonious appearance, you would actually use such methods to destroy a practitioner's confidence. Once these words were said, Shen Xiuhan's expression changed abruptly, as he had not expected Bailey Hongzhuang to say such words. But this kind of method is useless against me. I have walked through the ridicule of countless wretched people. My confidence is not something that can be destroyed by someone of your standard. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was chilly. As the head of an aristocratic family in her past life, what kind of things had she not experienced? And she was extremely familiar with such methods. Usually, only she would use such methods to deal with others. If others wanted to use such methods to deal with her, it was absolutely impossible. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the disciples present were all stunned. This Bailey Hongzhuang's way of doing things really could not be understood with common sense. But after Bailey Hongzhuang's reminder, those disciples who did not understand Shen Xiuhan's true meaning instantly understood and could not help but be shocked. Among them, not many had Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction ability, and they must have already fallen for Shen Xiuhan's earlier provocation. In a moment, everyone's impression of Shen Xiuhan had changed rapidly. Bailey Hongzhuang, what rubbish are you talking about? Shen Xiuhan saw the change in the crowd's attitude and couldn't help but start to panic. He had not expected Bailey Hongzhuang to be so quick-witted. His performance was extremely natural, and most people would not notice this point. It looked like he had still underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang. Cut the crap. You have yet to see my real ability of Bailey Hongzhuang. I will let you see who is the real trash. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold, her eyes deep and cold. For this kind of self-righteous guy, she could only crush him without any leeway. The power of the blood chi field erupted once again. The blood chi quickly spread throughout the entire battle arena, not giving Shen Xiuhan any chance to unleash his full strength. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang gestured to Xiao He and Xiao Bai with her eyes. Then, she quickly made hand seals with both hands. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, Shen Xiuhan's gaze turned even colder. He had stayed in Tiangang's sect for so long and only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was the most troublesome one. If he allowed Bailey Hongzhuang to continue developing like this, he did not know when Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to replace his position in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Thinking back to when Bailey Hongzhuang had first arrived at the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, Bailey Hongzhuang had caught up so much in less than a year's time. If he gave Bailey Hongzhuang another year's time, he was afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang would surpass him. This was not something he wanted to see. Since Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to compete with him now, he would take advantage of this opportunity to severely injure Bailey Hongzhuang. In the next moment, the energy in Shen Xiuhan's body surged wildly. His eyes were tainted with madness. He wanted to unleash his strongest martial technique and let Bailey Hongzhuang know the difference between them. Blood of the Vermilion Bird. Shen Xiuhan shouted. The fiery red energy once again engulfed him. A terrifying wave of energy instantly lingered around him. Chapter 2269. The terrifying energy seemed to evoke the deepest fear in everyone's hearts. It was like a flood or a ferocious beast attacking, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. Shen Xiuhan, who was surrounded by the fiery red energy, was like a flaming giant, invincible. Looking at Shen Xiuhan, the disciples could not help but gasp. They did not expect Shen Xiuhan's ultimate move to be so powerful. I remember that the blood of the Vermilion Bird is the hardest Earth rank martial skill to learn in the Four Halls. However, its power is even more shocking than ordinary Earth rank martial skills. I have never seen a Vermilion Bird Palace Hall disciple use the blood of the Vermilion Bird before. Could Shen Xiuhan be the only Vermilion Bird Palace Hall disciple who has mastered the blood of the Vermilion Bird? This time, Bailey Hongzhuang is really in danger. Shen Xiuhan, this guy is really abnormal. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the fiery red energy around Shen Xiuhan. After feeling the terrifying power, she understood that the blood of the Vermilion Bird was even more powerful than the Black Tortoise Palace Hall's azure waves. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. You chose to do so yourself. Shen Xiuhan's gaze was cold and sinister. Now he saw Bailey Hongzhuang as a thorn in his side. He had never had any sympathy for the weak. He also had no respect for the strong, because he wanted to be the strongest. Put away your high and mighty attitude. Do you really think that you are a big shot? Bailey Hongzhuang sneered. This guy was probably delusional. He thought that he was invincible and had the best martial skills. Even someone of D. Baichen's status was not as arrogant as Shen Xiuhan. It really made people speechless. Shen Xiuhan snorted coldly. Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude made him even more unhappy. The flames around him became even brighter. Bailey Hongzhuang's hands gradually formed a hand seal. A rainbow-colored circular seal quietly appeared. It was as beautiful as a rainbow. The power of the rainbow pearl had always been very strong. Even the elemental energy was much stronger than ordinary elemental energy. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang could already control whether she was using the rainbow essence force or normal essence force. This was something that Yulin Feng had taught her. Yulin Feng had always been ashamed of being related to the Lan family. Even a treasure like the Rainbow Divine Pearl had been forcefully taken out by him. As for the energy of not using the Rainbow Divine Pearl, Yulin Feng had long mastered it. Coincidentally, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't want people to know her relationship with the Lan family too early, so she learned this trick from Yulin Feng. The rainbow-colored essence force was too representative. As long as one was a member of an aristocratic family or someone who was well-informed, they would be able to identify the rainbow-colored essence force as soon as they saw it. However, now that Bailey Hongzhuang had condensed this 7-colored energy into her hand seal, she believed that no one would be able to tell. When everyone saw the rainbow-colored hand seal that Bailey Hongzhuang had condensed, they were stunned for a moment. Usually, the hand seals that everyone condensed were mostly of the same color. As for this kind of rainbow-colored hand seal, it was the first time that everyone had seen it. However, in the next second, everyone's attention was diverted, because Xiao He and Xiao Bai were also condensing their own hand seals. The black and white lights converged and finally condensed into the shape of an 8 trigrams. Quick look! Bailey Hongzhuang's 2 contracted beasts are displaying their skills. Damn, it really is. Chapter 2270. For Baishi's strength, everyone had some understanding, but for the other 2 contract beasts of Bailey Hongzhuang, no one knew their role and ability. Everyone only knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had 2 glib tongues, but they did not know how powerful they were. Seeing that the 2 contracted beasts had begun to move, everyone could not help but be curious. As Xiao He and Xiao Bai's primary energy surged, the 8 trigrams grew bigger. At the same time, a powerful aura exploded from the 8 trigrams. The cultivators were dumbfounded when they sensed how powerful the aura was. This aura was almost on par with a vermilion bird's blood. How could this be? The disciples of Tiangang Zong looked at each other. The joint attack of Bailey Hongzhuang's 2 contracted beasts could actually match the power of the Earth rank martial skill released by Shen Xiuhan, who was a Green Realm 6th stage. How could they fight? Not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang, they could not even defeat Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beasts. Shen Xiuhan had never thought much of Bailey Hongzhuang's 2 contracted beasts. He had only thought of them as beasts who only knew how to flaunt their eloquence and were only there for show. After all, every cultivator could only have 1 contracted beast. Although everyone knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had 3 contracted beasts, this did not make sense. Baishi's combat abilities were already very strong and could be said to be a great helper for cultivators. If Bailey Hongzhuang's other 2 contracted beasts had such powerful combat abilities, it would be too rare. Hence, many cultivators treated Xiao He and Xiao Bai as 2 beasts for show. These 2 beasts were so small, what kind of power could they have? However, at this moment, after seeing Xiao He and Xiao Bai release their martial arts techniques, Shen Xiuhan's eyes rippled. This was too unbelievable. I was wondering what other trump cards you had. So it was your contracted beasts. Shen Xiuhan's voice was icy. I admit that these 2 contracted beasts are very strong, but it's not enough. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. If the past wasn't enough then, what about now? Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the rainbow-colored seal between her hands suddenly merged into the 8 trigrams. The moment the rainbow-colored seal merged with the yin-yang 8 trigrams, the yin-yang 8 trigrams seemed to have a soul as it spun wildly. In the process of this rotation, everyone was surprised to find that the yin-yang 8 trigrams diagram was also dyed with the rainbow light. Immediately after, an extremely powerful wave of energy that made one's scalp tingle erupted from the yin-yang 8 trigrams diagram. The ferocious airwaves blew against her clothes. This kind of energy had completely exceeded the range of what a level 5 Green Realm cultivator could display. It was extremely shocking. On the high platform, the faces of the 5 palace masters changed at the same time when they saw the martial techniques displayed by Bailey Hongzhuang and her contracted beast. This martial technique, could it be a combined martial technique between the beasts and their master? Qin AI stared in a daze at the rotating rainbow-colored 8 trigrams diagram. His heart was filled with shock. He had only heard of this martial technique and had never seen it before, because this martial technique had been lost for a long time. In fact, many people thought that this was only an imagination left behind from ancient times and that such a martial technique did not exist. Chapter 2271. Not only Qin AI, but Gu Jingqing and the rest were also stunned by this scene. I never thought that such a martial technique would actually exist. This kind of power is indeed worthy of its reputation. Gu Jingqing exclaimed in admiration. This scene had given him too much of a shock. This martial technique, I'm afraid its power has reached Green Realm level 8? Yan Kaiqing deduced. Even with the help of the blood aura field, Bailey Hongzhuang's combat power had only increased to Green Realm level 5. However, with this fusion of martial techniques, her combat power had increased to such a level. It was simply too shocking. When faced with a high-level opponent, this was simply a sure-kill technique that could turn the situation around. At this moment, the Alchemy Hall Master, Sun Yin, completely understood the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang stubbornly wanted to become a cultivator despite her talent in alchemy. Bailey Hongzhuang's talent in cultivation was equally shocking. After Shen Xiuhan felt the power of this martial technique, he could no longer maintain his composure. Looking at the unparalleled beauty in front of him, his heart was already in a perilous situation. He could not even understand how Bailey Hongzhuang had done it. Even if it was a cross-level battle, being able to defeat an opponent who was 1 or 2 levels higher than oneself was already very heaven-defying. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's cross-level battle power was simply too strong, wasn't it? This was too hard to accept. Yin-Yang 8 trigrams formation. Bailey Hongzhuang shouted coldly. The Yin-Yang 8 trigrams formation, which shone with a rainbow light, attacked Shen Xiuhan without hesitation. She wanted this fellow to pay the price. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had attacked without saying a word, Shen Xiuhan's gaze hardened, and the blood of the vermilion bird immediately went up to meet her attack. At the same time, Shen Xiuhan immediately supported a wave of elemental energy to protect his body. The moment Bailey Hongzhuang displayed her martial technique, Shen Xiuhan already knew that he had lost this round. Now he no longer had the time to think about the consequences of his failure. He only hoped that he would not be seriously injured under the power of this martial technique. Boom! An extremely ear-piercing explosion rumbled like thunder from the ninth heaven. This sound was even more earth-shattering than any of the previous matches. It was as if the heavens and earth were about to collapse, causing fear to rise from the bottom of one's heart. Energy surged wildly, and the elemental energy in the air was boiling at an alarming rate. A protective shield had already appeared at the first instance. On the high platform, Di Beichen and the 5 temple masters paled when they saw the terrifying energy fluctuations coming from the protective barrier. "Everyone, get out of the way!" Qin AI immediately shouted. Hearing Qin AI's voice, the disciples who were close to the battle stage hurriedly retreated. In fact, when they saw the shockwaves of the battle, many disciples already had the urge to retreat. Bang! An earth-shattering explosion rang out, and the shimmering golden barrier shattered in the blink of an eye. Energy swept out from the martial arts stage, wreaking havoc in the surroundings. The disciples retreated like birds and beasts. The range of this kind of martial skill was extremely shocking. Di Beichen and the 4 temple masters acted at the same time. Their elemental energy formed a wall of elemental energy to prevent the disciples from getting hurt. After all, if a cultivator was careless enough to be caught in the aftermath of such a powerful attack, they would need to recuperate for a period of time. Chapter 2272. Damn it. Luckily, I managed to dodge in time. If I had been any slower, I would have been seriously injured. Lower your voice. Look at the disciples in front. All of their faces are pale, and some are even vomiting blood. The shockwave was too fast, and they did not have the time to dodge. This battle is too terrifying. From today onwards, the person I admire the most is no longer Shen Xiuhan, but Bailey Hongzhuang. I feel that Bailey Hongzhuang is going to win this battle. Many disciples were standing a few thousand meters away in a sorry state. Some of the seriously injured disciples were sent back to their lodgings with the help of their fellow disciples. If they did not properly recuperate from their injuries, it would affect their future cultivation. As for the cultivators who were not too seriously injured, they stubbornly remained where they were, wanting to see the final victor of this battle with their own eyes. Hallmaster Sun, I'll have to trouble you with these injured disciples. Di Beichen glanced at the number of injured disciples before turning his gaze towards Sun Yin. The disciples' cultivation resources had always been used sparingly. Now that they had been injured from watching the Battle of the 4 Palaces, they would naturally be responsible for the healing medicine. Hearing this, Sun Yin joined his hands and said, "Don't worry, Young sect master, I will handle this matter properly. Then I'll have to trouble you, home master's son. Young sect master, I'll take my leave first. Serene then led a portion of the Pill Refinement Palace disciples back to the Pill Refinement Palace. The smoke and dust gradually dissipated. The entire tournament stage, including the area around it, had been turned into ruins. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help but be dumbfounded. This was probably the most destructive battle in the Battle of the Four Palaces. The protective shield had been shattered in such a short period of time. Even the Hallmaster could only warn them at the first moment. It was clear how shocking the power was. However, when the crowd looked at the ruins, they did not see Bailey Hongzhuang and Shun Xiuhan's figures. They were instantly stunned. They couldn't have been buried, could they? The crowd secretly guessed. Based on the terrifying power from before, this was very likely. Just then, a soft sound attracted the crowd's attention. Then, the movement became louder and louder. A piece of rock was thrown to the side, revealing Bailey Hongzhuang's figure. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly climbed out of the rubble. But when everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang's sorry state, only shock remained in their hearts. Bailey Hongzhuang's hair was messy, and her clean face was stained with dust. Most importantly, blood continued to drip from her body and quickly dyed the stone beneath her feet red. Even though they were separated by a long distance, everyone could feel Bailey Hongzhuang's weak aura. It was obvious that Bailey Hongzhuang had suffered serious injuries in this match. Following that, another faint sound rang out. Everyone quickly turned their gazes towards the source of the sound. Clearly, it was Shun Xiuhan. Shun Xiuhan's figure slowly appeared. However, Shun Xiuhan no longer had the strength to support himself and could only lie in the rubble, gasping for breath. From the way his veins were popping out and the way his hands were exerting strength, one could tell that he had tried his best to climb out of the rubble. However, he had failed in the end and could only continue to struggle. Chapter 2273. Heavens, Bailey Hongzhuang has really defeated Shun Xiuhan. Doesn't this mean that Bailey Hongzhuang has become the new Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's most powerful cultivator? I've never seen Shun Xiuhan in such a miserable state. Even when he had fought with the other Palace Hall's top cultivators, he had never fallen into such a state. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Shun Xiuhan was unable to stand up, she could not help but smile. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked towards Shun Xiuhan. The crowd watched silently as Bailey Hongzhuang moved. They did not know what Bailey Hongzhuang was going to do. Bailey Hongzhuang's every step was slow, but everyone waited patiently. Because Bailey Hongzhuang was a true hero, a truly powerful cultivator. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang stopped in front of Shun Xiuhan. Her beautiful face was filled with disdain and ridicule. Shun Xiuhan, now do you know who's the weak one? Her words were like a vicious slap to Shun Xiuhan's face, recalling Shun Xiuhan's high and mighty attitude before. But now he could only look up at Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him. Shun Xiuhan only felt a burst of blood in his body, and an indescribable sense of humiliation rose in his heart. I despise people like you the most. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly squatted down and gently patted Shun Xiuhan's face. If you don't have the ability, then stay put. Don't be arrogant like others. You don't have a right. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's insulting words, Shun Xiuhan could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His breathing weakened once again, but his eyes widened as he glared fiercely at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang, what about you? Bailey Hongzhuang did not give Shun Xiuhan the slightest chance and stepped directly on his face. No matter who it is, their self-esteem is not something a person like you can trample on. Crack! A crisp sound was heard. Shun Xiuhan's nose was broken by Bailey Hongzhuang and blood gushed out of his nose. Earlier, Bailey Hongzhuang had wanted to punch Shun Xiuhan's nose, but at this moment, she felt that doing so would dirty her hands. Against this kind of person who didn't treat others as human beings, it was necessary to use such simple and crude methods to let him feel the feeling of his pride being trampled on. After everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Usually, when they looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, they only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was easy to bully. However, after witnessing what Bailey Hongzhuang did, they finally understood that Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely not a pushover. On the contrary, Bailey Hongzhuang was the real deal. Bailey Hongzhuang would not even bother to trample on ordinary people. Xiao Feilin and Xiao Feiyu also looked at each other. None of them had expected that their little junior sister, who looked like a little lamb, would be so violent. Damn, this junior sister Bailey is really to my liking. I've always wanted to do this to Shun Xiuhan, but this guy always avoided me and did not give me the chance. Now, junior sister Bailey has already done it for me. This feeling is as good as I imagined. Yinbin could not hide the excitement on his face. He liked this kind of simple and crude method. Chapter 2274. After settling everything, Bailey Hongzhuang turned her gaze towards the high platform. Elder referee, can we announce the results now? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the elder referee finally recovered from his shock. Shen Xiuhan was really miserable today. Too miserable. Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's Bailey Hongzhuang wins. On the high platform, the three palace masters turned their gazes toward Qin AI. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shun Xiuhan were both disciples of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. No one had expected the two of them to fight so desperately. Bailey Hongzhuang's glory belonged to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Shun Xiuhan's humiliation also belonged to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Qin AI's feelings should be very complicated now. When Qin AI sensed the other palace master's gazes, she couldn't help but smile as she said, "A healthy competition is beneficial to increasing the disciples' abilities." However, when she said these words, Qin AI still felt a little lacking in confidence. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked past the ruins. Immediately after, under the shocked gazes of the crowd, Di Beichun directly leaped from the tournament stage to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. In the next moment, Di Beichun carried Bailey Hongzhuang horizontally and walked towards the bedroom. This scene was undoubtedly another heavy blow to the hearts of the crowd. However, everyone now only felt that the young sect master and Bailey Hongzhuang looked so compatible. Today's battle had left a deep impression in the hearts of all the disciples. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure was also deeply imprinted in their minds, unable to be forgotten for a long time. After returning to the bedroom, Di Beichun immediately took out an elixir and fed it to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun in front of her and slowly asked, "Have my actions today gone overboard?" She had always intended to keep this as her final trump card and was unwilling to reveal it until the most critical moment. Furthermore, as long as she could obtain a place in the Battle of Zhuolu, she did not care about her ranking in the Battle of the Four Palaces. However, Shun Xiuhan's actions today had really angered her. Di Beichun shook his head. "If it weren't for you, I would have taught that guy a lesson myself." Someone actually dared to use such despicable means on Di Beichun's woman. They were simply looking down on him. If it were not for the fact that the Battle of the Four Palaces was being held, he would have already taken that guy's life. Even with his status, he had never been so arrogant. What was Shun Xiuhan? Was he worthy? Shun Xiuhan's strength is very strong. With him participating in the Battle of Zhuolu, Tiangang's sect's strength will also increase. Di Beichun's eyes turned cold. This kind of guy won't fit in with the group, even if we keep him. He'll only cause more trouble. What's the point of keeping him? Di Beichun had been watching the competition from the high platform. The guy had actually dared to do such a thing. If he did not teach Shun Xiuhan a lesson, then he, as the young sect master, would be treated like air in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun's furious expression and understood that Di Beichun was probably angrier than she was when Shun Xiuhan had humiliated her. In both her previous and current lives, she had seen many shameless guys and was already used to it. Wife, recuperate well first. Don't think about other things. The coldness in Di Beichun's eyes disappeared and was replaced with gentleness and warmth. Chapter 2275. Upon hearing Di Beichun's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but find it funny. As a doctor herself, she knew her own body's condition very well. Could it be that if she told Di Beichun would invite another doctor for her? However, she still felt a thick warmth in her heart. Ever since she had cultivated bitterly in the desert world, it had long become a habit for her to get injured. Not only her, Di Beichun and the three beasts were also frequently injured. Simply put, during the period of closed-door cultivation, the wounds on their bodies had never completely disappeared. Even though today's fight had resulted in serious injuries, these injuries were nothing to Bailey Hongzhuang now. While Bailey Hongzhuang was quietly recuperating from her injuries, the Tiangang sect disciples were completely stunned by the shocking news. Many cultivators felt that there was no suspense in the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and Shun Xiuhan. Shun Xiuhan would undoubtedly win. So many disciples did not go to watch. However, after knowing the shocking result, many disciples regretted their decision. If they had known earlier that this battle would be so exciting, they would have gone to watch it no matter what. The Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's #1 expert, Shun Xiuhan, had been pushed down from the altar in such a humiliating manner. If they did not witness it with their own eyes, it would be a huge regret. The disciples who had witnessed the battle with their own eyes were proudly bragging about how exciting the battle was. Especially Bailey Hongzhuang's crushing kick, it was simply too cool. She had become famous in one battle. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang had truly become famous in one battle. In an instant, Bailey Hongzhuang's position in Tiangang sect had risen to one of the top 4 experts. Many disciples were secretly guessing who was stronger between Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 experts. The finals of the Battle of the 4 Palaces were still in progress. The top experts of the other 3 palaces had displayed their strongest abilities. However, everyone could not help but look forward to the situation where Bailey Hongzhuang or Shun Xiuhan would fight again. Shun Xiuhan had not appeared in front of everyone since that day, when he was severely humiliated by Bailey Hongzhuang. The usual proud son of heaven had appeared in such a humiliating situation in front of everyone. Shun Xiuhan himself could not bear it. While Bailey Hongzhuang was recuperating, Xia Jiqing and the others had come to visit Bailey Hongzhuang. However, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's amazing recovery ability, Xia Jiqing and the others were speechless for a while. In the past, Bailey Hongzhuang was abnormally strong. Now, even her recovery ability was abnormal. At night, Di Beichun suddenly took out a letter and handed it to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly, her clear eyes filled with doubt. It's a letter from Wuji Palace. Take a look. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful eyes lit up. Since she had rescued her parents, she had not been in contact with her master and the others. Now, her master and mistress had taken the initiative to contact her. As a disciple, she felt guilty. Opening the letter, Bailey Hongzhuang saw that her master and mistress were concerned about her recent situation. This letter not only contained the content written by her master, but also the content written by her mistress. Her mistress undoubtedly knew that her performance in the alchemist competition was extremely praiseworthy. She was also concerned about her parents' recovery. Chapter 2276. Until she read the last piece of paper, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression turned serious. She was afraid that the contents of the last piece of paper was the main reason why her master sent this letter. Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's serious expression and couldn't help but ask with concern, "Wife, did something happen?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "It seems that our plan will have to be changed." As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang handed the letter to Di Beichun. Di Beichun took a look and his gaze gradually changed. "Palace Mistress Yu hopes that you will be the representative of Limitless Palace to participate in the Battle of Zhuolu." Di Beichun slowly said, "Actually, if you think about it carefully, as the successor of Palace Mistress Yu, you are the young Palace Mistress of Limitless Palace. It is only right for you to lead the disciples of Limitless Palace to participate in the Battle of Zhuolu." Previously, none of them had thought of this. Now that he saw the contents of the letter, he finally thought of this point. "So, you also agree that I will participate in the Battle of Zhuolu as a disciple of Limitless Palace?" Bailey Hongzhuang's black and white eyes flashed with a complicated and wise light as she pondered. According to her master, if she participated in the Battle of Zhuelu as the representative of Limitless Palace, then she didn't need to fight for a spot. Before the Battle of Zhuelu, she could stay in Tiangang sect and cultivate with Di Beichen. When the Battle of Zhuelu was about to begin, she could return to Limitless Palace. Di Beichen nodded slightly. This is also a good idea. As everyone knows, Limitless Palace and Lan Clan's relationship has always been bad. Once they participate in the Battle of Zhuelu, Limitless Palace and Lan Clan's teams are destined to be enemies. In comparison, our Tiangang sect and Lan Clan usually don't have much interaction. If we show that we are against each other, plus you and Ant's extremely similar appearance, I'm afraid it will arouse the Lan Clan suspicions. Once Lan Qingyan tells this news to Yu Siqing and connects it to Master's existence, I'm afraid she will guess your identity. However, if you go as the young palace mistress of Limitless Palace, it won't be so easy to connect the dots. Listening to Di Beichen's analysis, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed a trace of fluctuation. Just like what Di Beichen said, she wanted to participate in the Battle of Zhuelu to formally meet with Lan Qingyan. However, her action against Lan Clan's actions still had to wait until her parents make preparations. Therefore, she would only appear as Lan Qingyan's opponent in the Battle of Zhuelu, but would not let Lan Qingyan know who she really was. Of Zhuelu decided. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were sharp and resolute. Master's attitude was to let her participate as a successor. After all, the sex of Palace was of Limitless Palace previously. Limitless Palace didn't have a successor, and only the disciples participated. However, now that they had Bailey Hongzhuang, they didn't need to do the same as before. Di Beichen's lips curled into an evil smile. If you participate as the young palace mistress of Limitless Palace, we will be allies when we meet in the Battle of Zhuelu. I'm looking forward to it. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly remembered that the finals of the Battle of Four Palaces was still ongoing. She couldn't help but frown. Beichen, do I still have to continue competing in this Battle of Four Palaces? Chapter 2277. The most important thing for you to do now is to spend more time on cultivation. Palace Master, you had left a slot for you. I'm sure the disciples of Limitless Palace will not accept this. When you return to Limitless Palace, if your strength is not strong enough, I'm afraid it will cause criticism. Regarding the matters between the disciples, Di Beichen could be said to be clear. Through Bailey Hongzhuang's performance in the Battle of the Four Palaces, no one would be able to criticize Bailey Hongzhuang for obtaining a slot. However, this was Tiangang sect. The disciples of Limitless Palace did not know Bailey Hongzhuang's true strength. All the disciples were fighting for a slot in the Battle of Zhuelu. Bailey Hongzhuang did not do anything and was able to obtain a slot. Naturally, people would not be convinced. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head. If I appear as the leader of Limitless Palace, I'm afraid my strength is not enough. Even in Tiangang sect, her strength could only be considered as a strong teammate. If she wanted to be the leader, there was still a huge gap in strength. Master had given her such an important task. She must not disappoint her master. At the very least, she must let the disciples of Limitless Palace be convinced of her strength. Only then would she be able to lead Limitless Palace's team in the Battle of Zhuelu. This matter was easy to say, but it was not an easy thing to do. Even if the strength of the leaders of the various forces was not comparable to Di Beichen, it should not be too far off. Therefore, what she needed to do now was to catch up to Di Beichen's strength as soon as possible. Otherwise, with her strength, she would only be ridiculed if she were to lead Limitless Palace's team in the Battle of Zhuelu. Di Beichen saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had already understood everything and was relieved. Looks like you will have to work even harder in your cultivation. Di Beichen sighed. The time given to Hongzhuang was still too short. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head slightly. I will do my best. All right, my wife. Limitless Palace also sent someone to deliver this. Di Beichen handed a small box to Bailey Hongzhuang. The box had been locked with his mind. No one other than Bailey Hongzhuang could open it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the exquisite wooden box in front of her, and her eyes were filled with astonishment. This box was so exquisite that it probably couldn't contain anything. She really couldn't guess what her master had sent her. Bailey Hongzhuang's spiritual power slowly entered the wooden box. Immediately after, her spirit shook, and there was suddenly one more thing in her mind. In Di Beichen's eyes, he only saw that the wooden box was empty after it was opened. Bailey Hongzhuang sensed the new thing in her mind. In the next moment, she actually appeared on the stairway to heaven. Dense elemental energy instantly wrapped around her. It was clearly the same situation as when she was cultivating on the stairway to heaven in the ruins and limitless palace. After thinking carefully, Bailey Hongzhuang already understood. The reason why her master did this was to help her increase her cultivation as soon as possible. With the existence of the stairway to heaven, her cultivation speed would be more than 2 times faster than before. Perhaps this was the opportunity for her to catch up with other cultivators. When Bailey Hongzhuang exited the spiritual world, she saw Di Beichen looking at her worriedly. "My wife, how are you?" Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. "I'm fine. Master has implanted the stairway to heaven's imprint in my mind. I can enter the stairway to heavens through my mind and cultivate on the stairway to heavens." Chapter 2278. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, a ripple appeared on Di Beichen's calm face. "I didn't expect Palace Master Yu's methods to be so amazing. In this way, your cultivation speed will be twice as fast as usual." He already knew that Yu Linfeng was extraordinary. Even the leader of the ordinary forces praised Yu Linfeng. At this moment, after seeing Yu Linfeng's methods with his own eyes, Di Beichen couldn't help but sigh. This method was definitely not something that an ordinary person could perform. He had already seen the power of this heaven stairway when he was in Limitless Palace. He finally understood why Yu Linfeng's cultivation was so amazing at such a young age. After all, cultivating under such rich yuan energy, his cultivation speed was much faster than ordinary people. However, from Yu Linfeng's series of methods of taking out the Rainbow Divine Pearl and fusing it with Bailey Hongzhuang, it could be seen that Yu Linfeng was extremely smart and absolutely incomparable to ordinary people. Bailey Hongzhuang also sighed her heart. "I didn't expect Master to even think of this for me. Palace Master Yu is sincere to you. Wife, you really found a good master." Di Beichen's face was full of smiles. From the bottom of his heart, he was happy for Bailey Hongzhuang. He also had a very good master and grew up under his master's guidance. If it wasn't for his master, he wouldn't be where he was now. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled like a flower. "Beichun, sometimes I feel that maybe it's because I suffered too much in the past, so the heavens want to compensate me now." Now, she had an unprecedented satisfaction. Her family was reunited, her master and mistress's love, and Beichen's devotion. "As long as you feel happy." Di Beichen lovingly stroked Bailey Hongzhuang's head. He could feel the changes in Bailey Hongzhuang over this period of time. Ever since she had cured Mu Jin's illness, she had become much happier. In the past, Bailey Hongzhuang was always stubborn and strong, but people couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang was working hard, but people could see the sunshine in her heart. Following the news that Bailey Hongzhuang would no longer continue to participate in the Battle of the Four Palaces, Tiangang's sect also caused a great uproar. No one understood why Bailey Hongzhuang did not want to continue the competition. With the strength that Bailey Hongzhuang had displayed, she might even be able to take first place. Then, another piece of news was even more shocking. Not only was Bailey Hongzhuang no longer participating in the Battle of the Four Palaces, she had even given up on a martial arts championship. The disciples were in an uproar. However, the disciples who were participating in the competition were very happy. This way, they would have one more place. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had directly recommended her place to Yin Yuhuan so that Yin Yuhuan could take over Bailey Hongzhuang's place and continue to participate in the Battle of the Four Palaces. When Yin Yuhuan had found out about Bailey Hongzhuang's decision, he had been very shocked. Initially, he had no chance of participating in the battle of the martial arts championship. He never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would now give his place to him. Initially, Yin Yuan was not prepared to accept it. After all, this was simply too outrageous. However, after hearing the young sect master's words, Yin Yuan chose to accept it. After all, this was Bailey Hongzhuang's good intentions. Besides, he had the power to do so. Chapter 2279. Under such circumstances, the slots for the Battle of Zhuolu were finally confirmed. After the Battle of the Four Palaces, the disciples who had obtained the slots for the Battle of Zhuolu would go out with the young sect master to train in order to increase their strength faster. Usually, everyone would be in seclusion in the sect to train. The Battle of Zhuolu had high requirements for the cultivators' actual combat. Hence, Di Beichen and the 5 palace masters made such a decision. From the performance of the Battle of the Four Palaces, they could tell that the individual combat strength of the disciples was not weak, but there was still room for improvement. Going out together as a group to train together was very beneficial. Wife, let's go out together tomorrow. Di Beichen saw Bailey Hongzhuang come out of the desert world and said to Bailey Hongzhuang, these few days, he had been busy preparing for the Battle of the Four Palaces and the Battle of Zhuolu. He did not train together with Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. The results of the Battle of the Four Palaces have been announced. That's right. Time is of the essence, and we can't waste any time. So we have to leave early tomorrow morning. I'm fine with it. Early the next morning, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest gathered at the foot of Tiangang Sect's mountain. Other than the 10 people representing Tiangang Sect, there was a total of 11 people, including Bailey Hongzhuang. When Gue Jinyuan and the rest saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had come, their faces were filled with curiosity. Junior sister Bailey, are you going to train with us this time? Gue Jinyuan asked with a smile. Gue Jinyuan was not the only one. Almost all the disciples looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang had suddenly given up on participating in the Battle of the Four Palaces and the Battle of Zhuolu. This had made everyone very confused. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Gue Jinyuan, Yi Qinyu, and Yin Yuan had all successfully obtained the slots for the Battle of Zhuolu, her smile widened. That's right, I'm going to train with everyone, but I won't be participating in the battle for deer. If I have the chance to go out and train, I'll have more chances to improve myself. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Her simple words had already dispelled some people's concerns. I see. Yi Qinyu smiled. I didn't think that I would have the opportunity to train with junior martial sister Bailey. I'm really lucky. Yin Yuan walked over to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His honest and upright face was now filled with embarrassment. Junior sister Bailey, I have to thank you for recommending me to the young sect master. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this opportunity. Senior brother Yin, you already have the strength to enter the finals. It's only right for me to do this. In fact, if Yin Yuan did not draw Bailey Hongzhuang during the competition, with his strength, he would definitely be in the top 10 of Tiangang Sect. Yin Yuan saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were clear and didn't seem to be faking it. The burden in his heart also lessened a little. He also had a better impression of Bailey Hongzhuang. It was rare for him to admire someone, and this person was just as admirable as he thought. For a moment, everyone's attitude towards Bailey Hongzhuang was exceptionally friendly. As long as it was an expert, the attitude of the people around them would always be friendly. Not long after, Di Beichen and the 5 palace masters appeared in front of everyone. Chapter 2280. As soon as Di Beichen opened his mouth, the power of the young sect master had already spread out. Yes, young sect master. Everyone spoke in unison, looking serious and serious. With the young sect master accompanying them, it was impossible for them not to cooperate. As long as they could perform well in the Battle of Zhuolu, when they returned to Tiangang Sect, their status would be different from before. Cultivation resources would also be greatly increased, and the benefits could be said to be unlimited. The place we're going to train this time is the well-known Bloodground Abyss. There are many tyrannical monsters there. On the one hand, everyone can improve their cultivation through fighting with monsters. On the other hand, It can also help reduce the hidden dangers of humans. However, the monsters near the Bloodground Abyss are all mutated monsters. Their strength is much stronger than ordinary monsters, so everyone must be very careful when fighting with monsters. You must not underestimate the enemy. Hearing that the place to train was the Bloodground Abyss, everyone could not help but be slightly stunned. That was a place with a great reputation. Ordinary cultivators did not dare to approach it at all. However, that was only for ordinary cultivators. For cultivators of their strength, it was definitely not a place of death. In addition, we're going to participate in the Battle of Zhualun next, so our relationship is that of teammates. Everyone, don't be too rigid. You could tell me anything. There is no need to worry. Di Baiqian's words were concise and comprehensive, but orderly, including all the content. When the 5 palace lords saw that Di Baiqian had handled things so well, they were very happy in their hearts. The sect master had now completely handed over Tiangang's sect to the young sect master. Fortunately, the young sect master's performance had always been praiseworthy. Now, he was even more capable of taking on heavy responsibilities. They believed that Tiangang's sect would continue to prosper under the leadership of the young sect master. Yes, young sect master. Everyone's eyes lit up, and they responded one after another. The opportunity to become teammates and even friends with the young sect master was not something ordinary people could have. After Di Baiqian saw that everyone had understood, his gaze turned to the 5 hall masters with a serious and solemn expression. 5 hall masters, in the days when I am not in Tiangang's sect, I will have to trouble you with Tiangang's sect's affairs. Young sect master, don't worry, we will do our best, the 5 hall masters said in unison. In fact, as long as there were no accidents, there was nothing that required everyone's attention in Tiangang's sect. Immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang and the group set off towards the Bloodground Abyss. Bloodground Abyss. When Bailey came to this place again, she could not help but feel a myriad of emotions in her heart. Thinking back to when he had just arrived here, she was still so insignificant and pitifully weak. Now that she had come to the Bloodground Abyss again, she was clearly much stronger than before, even though she still couldn't be considered to be very powerful. Along the way, everyone was rushing with all their might. Their speed was far faster than when she had first arrived. In the group, many disciples came to the Bloody Ground Abyss for the first time. However, all of them had heard of the Bloody Ground Abyss. Is this the famous Bloodground Abyss? Xiao Feiyu's gaze landed on the blood-colored world in the distance. He had long heard that the Bloodground Abyss was enveloped by blood qi. Now that he had seen it, the rumors were true. Chapter 2281. The disciples were all looking at the Bloodground Abyss. There were many mysterious and special places like the Bloodground Abyss in the Shengxian continent. These places often had very mysterious powers that defied common sense and were incomprehensible. However, such places were always something that everyone was willing to explore. Many of the disciples in the team had been to the Bloodground Abyss before. After all, the inheritance of the Blood Qi Tower had attracted a large number of young cultivators to try it. Once they obtained the inheritance of the Blood Qi field, it would be really amazing. However, everyone returned in disappointment after gaining some knowledge and combat experience in the Blood Qi field. This was because the inheritance of the Blood Qi Tower was indeed worthy of its reputation. It was too difficult to obtain. Young sect master, were we going to train in the Bloodground Abyss this time? Gue Jianyuan asked. Not only Gue Jianyuan, but most of the disciples present were very curious. The Blood Qi Tower was only suitable for Crimson Realm cultivators. It was meaningless for them. Bailey Hongzhuang had a guess in her heart. Back then, Di Baiqian wanted to take her to the back of the Blood Qi field to train, but they didn't have time at that time, and she was too weak to go. At that time, Di Baiqian told her that they would come here again if there was a chance. Now it seemed that they were going to that place. There is a training ground at the back of the Blood Qi Tower. Low-level cultivators can't enter it at all. However, the Blood Qi Tower's reputation is too great. So many people think that only the Bloodground Abyss is worth training in. We're going there this time, Di Baiqian explained. Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up. They had indeed only heard of the Blood-Chi Tower's reputation and knew nothing about the place Di Bachin was talking about. By the way, since we are out, you can call me Captain from now on, Di Bachin exhorted. The number of cultivators they would meet during this experiential learning was definitely not small. Once someone addressed him as young sect master, his identity would naturally be exposed. Yes, Captain, everyone responded. Soon, everyone walked into the blood-ground abyss. Everyone felt as if they had walked into a world of blood. Everyone's eyes were covered in red. The buildings, the blood, and the sky seemed to be connected together. The faint smell of blood spread in the air, and there was still fresh blood on the ground. The cultivators who had been to the blood-ground abyss before were no stranger to this scene. However, the cultivators who had just arrived could not help but be surprised. Rumors were one thing, but seeing it with one's own eyes was another. This place was completely different from the clean streets and friendly shops that he usually saw. This was a gathering place of blood and filth. However, everyone's psychological quality was very good. Even if their hearts were filled with surprise and shock, they did not show it on their faces. As Di Bachin's group entered, the cultivators of the blood-ground abyss started sizing them up. However, because Di Bachin's group had quite a number of people, coupled with their extraordinary auras, even some of the people who usually liked to plot against them had put away their crooked thoughts. This kind of person was obviously not an ordinary person. Once he made a move, it was very likely that he would be the unlucky one. Chapter 2282. When they passed by the Blood-Chi Tower, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but take a look. This place was the place that had helped her the most. When the cultivators of the bloody ground abyss saw Di Bachin and the rest walking towards the training grounds without hesitation, everyone's faces were filled with surprise. At the same time, they were glad that they didn't make a move. Otherwise, they would really be finished. One had to know that those who entered the second training ground of the bloody ground abyss were all true experts. As everyone got closer and closer to the second training ground, everyone felt the temperature rise. The original slight coldness had dissipated and was replaced by a dry heat. Everyone has been on the road for so long. Let's rest for a day and understand the situation. We'll start moving tomorrow. What do you all think? Di Bachin turned around and looked at the people behind him, asking for their opinions. Hearing this, everyone nodded. Di Bachin's arrangement was undoubtedly the most appropriate. Right now, they were completely confused about the second training ground. If they didn't understand the situation better before making a move, it would be too rash. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the restaurant, many gazes fell on everyone. The situation in the restaurant was the same as what Bailey Hongzhuang had seen before. These big men were all wearing thin clothes, and many of them directly exposed their arms and chests. Obviously, they couldn't stand the heat here. Di Bachin looked around the restaurant, and the others all withdrew their gazes. In this kind of situation, it was best not to act at the beginning. As for the later stages, it would depend on the situation. Everyone ordered some dishes. These dishes were all made from demonic beast meat. The fragrance was overflowing, and it was definitely not something ordinary food could compare to. After Xiao Feilin and the rest ate the food, they couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. The taste was really good. This place is really interesting. I don't know why it's so hot. Xiao Feiyu's eyes were filled with curiosity. She felt that the heat seemed to be spreading from the ground. Could it be that there was a volcano nearby? The food here is really delicious. It tastes much better than what I usually eat. Yin Yuan exclaimed. Normally, he spent all his time on cultivation and didn't have any requirements for food. Most of the time, he ate dry rations. Now that he had tasted the demonic beast meat, he felt that it was truly delicious. Speaking of which, cultivators usually found joy in suffering. They simply did not enjoy as much as ordinary people. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, everyone went to the rooms on the second floor to rest. Di Bachin winked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bachin walked out of the restaurant together. It had been a long time since they came to the blood-ground abyss, so they had to learn more about the situation here before they started their training. Baishir walked majestically beside Bailey Hongzhuang. It was no longer the cute little pet from before, but a contract beast that could intimidate others. Some cultivators were a little afraid of Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Feiyu just by looking at Baisher's appearance. With one look, they could tell that Baisher's level was not weak. A cultivator who could have such a contract beast was naturally not something an ordinary person could compare to. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were still sitting on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's shoulders. This scene was exactly the same as a few years ago, except that everyone had grown up. Chapter 2283. The geographical environment here is different from other places. It's like a volcano. There's magma flowing underground, so it's extremely hot. However, the terrain here is very stable. Even if there's magma underground, it hasn't collapsed for so many years. Under the influence of this strange terrain, the demonic beasts here all have a kind of fire attribute. Even the demonic crystals in their bodies are the same. Hearing Di Beichen's explanation, Bailey Hongzhuang continued, "So, the demonic crystals in the demonic beasts here are the same as the demonic crystals in the desert world. They're different from ordinary demonic crystals?" Di Beichen nodded slightly. After the research of cultivators, they found that there's nothing wrong with these demonic crystals. There's no difference in their effects. They're even better than ordinary demonic crystals. The dishes we ate in the restaurant were also made from the meat of demonic beasts here. Have you noticed the difference in these demonic beasts' meat? These demonic beasts' meat seems to be easier to absorb than the ones we eat outside. The energy inside is also richer, Bailey Hongzhuang replied. Thinking back to when she was busy detoxifying her parents and grandmother, Di Beichen had always prepared demonic beast meat for her. This was because demonic beast's meat was purer than ordinary poultry. It contained fewer impurities and could also help cultivators recover a certain amount of vitality. The first time she ate demonic beast meat in the Bloodland Abyss, she didn't pay much attention. However, after tasting it today, she immediately noticed it. That's right. The energy of these mutated demonic beasts is easier for humans to absorb. Therefore, there's nothing wrong with this mutation, Di Beichen said with a faint smile. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with understanding. There were always many special things and special species in this world. When one first heard of them, they often felt that it was impossible. However, they really existed. Thinking back, she liked to explore these strange places. After obtaining the Chaos Ring, she transmigrated. Therefore, she didn't doubt this existence at all. "Wife, let's go ahead and take a look." Di Beichen had a warm and elegant smile on his face. He held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and walked forward. The closer they got to the second training ground, the hotter the temperature became. Bailey Hongzhuang's forehead was already sweating. What entered his eyes was a fiery red mountain peak. The range was extraordinarily large. At a glance, it seemed to be endless. What was strange was that there were also fiery red plants growing on the mountain peak. At a glance, it was bright red, revealing a somewhat bewitching beauty. Bailey Hongzhuang could feel the rolling magma below. It was because of the magma that the temperature was so high. To think that plants can grow in this place. This is simply too miraculous. Xiao He stared blankly at the scene before her, as a look of disbelief appeared on her face. Magma was flowing on the ground. The nutrients that could provide plants with nutrients had probably disappeared long ago, but these plants were still able to survive. It was really amazing. This world is really full of strange things, Xiao Bai sighed. Cultivators hunt demonic beasts in these mountains. There are many demonic beasts, and their reproduction speed is also very fast. Many cultivators will bring the corpses back after killing the demonic beasts. They will sell them for a good price or eat to their heart's content. Chapter 2284. Bailey Hongzhuang looked ahead. Some cultivators were slowly dragging the corpses of demon beasts, and there were several eye-catching wounds on their bodies. It was obvious that these people cultivated here all the time. Just by looking at their eyes and the murderous aura they inadvertently revealed, one could tell that they lived a life of bloodshed every day. When these people passed by Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, they deliberately glanced at them, obviously assessing their strength. Almost all the people in the Bloodground Abyss were cruel and merciless people, because if they didn't have such a temperament, they would have lost their lives long ago. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun also had cold faces. They didn't intend to take the initiative to attack others, but if someone attacked them, they would definitely not be polite. With Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's current strength, ordinary people were no match for them. Most of the cultivators in the Bloodground Abyss had sharp eyes and could naturally see this point. Immediately, they didn't stay and directly left. It seems that this place hasn't changed much compared to before, and the method is still the same as before. Let's go back. Di Beichun said. Since they had confirmed that nothing had changed, they could come here tomorrow to train. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. She was very curious about the strength of the demon beasts here, and she didn't know how they compared to the demon beasts in the desert world. In comparison, Baishur was the most excited. As soon as he heard that there was a different demon crystal, all the cells in his body were already jumping. He had always been the most interested in demon crystals. Bailey Hongzhuang stroked Baishur's head. She knew that Baishur would be very excited when he heard the news. Speaking of which, ever since Baishur swallowed the demon crystal in the desert world, his cultivation speed had been much faster than usual. This proved that some special demon crystals could promote Baishur's strength to increase faster. She didn't know if the demon crystals here would have a better effect on Baishur's strength. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun returned to the restaurant together. Di Beichun informed the other disciples that everything was normal, and they could move without worry tomorrow. Only then did they return to their own houses. Bailey Hongzhuang's mind moved, and she directly entered the heaven stairway to cultivate. She understood that her master had integrated the method of entering the heaven stairway into her mind, and only she could enter it to gain experience. After all, this place wasn't Limitless Palace. Di Beichun and the three beasts could enter with her. Therefore, the three beasts made their own decisions. Baishur would follow Bailey Hongzhuang to train, and Xiaobai and cultivate in the desert world. They had been training in the desert world for so long. They already knew which places were safe and which places had powerful demon beasts. Xiaohei and Xiaobai didn't plan to fight demon beasts. They only wanted to find a secluded cave to cultivate. Half a day in the desert world was equivalent to 3 days. Only in this way could they obtain the greatest improvement in a short period of time. Otherwise, their master and Baishur would leave them far behind. This was a situation that they couldn't accept. Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Xiaohei and Xiaobai had already made up their minds. She nodded. Then you have to be more careful in the desert world. Chapter 2285. The next day, just as the sky started to brighten, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest walked out of the house. Today was the day for everyone to start their training. Everyone looked at each other and smiled. After a long journey, everyone had become familiar with each other. What's more, as the existence of the top 10 in Tiangang sect, there were not many contradictions between each other. In addition, now that everyone was teammates with a young sect master, these contradictions were naturally suppressed. Of course, there was another reason for such peace. Shun Xiuhan was not in the team. If Shun Xiuhan was here, Yinbin would definitely fight with Shun Xiuhan, and the situation would be much more complicated. Bailey Hongzhuang did not know how Di Beichun dealt with Shun Xiuhan's matter, but based on her understanding of Di Beichun, Shun Xiuhan's outcome would not be good. Di Beichun had always been protective. Even if Shun Xiuhan had been severely taught a lesson by her, Di Beichun would not let him off so easily. The disciples in the team were also curious about this point, but no one mentioned it. No matter how they looked at it, Shun Xiuhan was courting death. He clearly knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's identity was not ordinary, but he still dared to provoke her. The position of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's #1 expert was indeed much higher than the ordinary disciples, but compared to the young sect master, he was definitely someone who could be replaced. After everyone had breakfast together in the restaurant, they set off for the training ground. Along the way, Di Beichun also explained the details of the training ground to everyone. From afar, it looks like a mountain range that stretches endlessly, but in fact, there are many caves and tunnels here. Most of the monsters here are hidden in the caves and tunnels, and you can't find the monsters from the outside. If we want to hunt monsters, we can only go deep inside. It's pitch black inside, and we can't use torches, so everyone has to be extra careful. Once we're ambushed, it can cause serious injuries. D-Bachan's voice was deep and serious. The demonic beasts here are very strong. The closer we get to the back, the stronger the demonic beasts are. In this place, there are also demonic beasts that are stronger than us. We must not lower our guard. Listening to D-Bachan's introduction of the strange landscape, everyone was filled with curiosity and doubt about this place. However, none of them were newborns, so they kept everything D-Bachan said in mind. After Bailey Hongzhuang found out that the Yao beasts here liked to launch sneak attacks, she knew that it was dangerous to train here. However, if one cultivated here for a long time, the benefits were obvious. At the very least, his reaction speed and agility would be greatly improved, and his ability to sense danger would also increase. These things didn't seem to be a big deal in normal times, but they were very useful in daily life. After all, the battles between cultivators didn't always happen in a fair and just tournament arena. There were even more conflicts in private. Once someone launched a sneak attack, the effect of this ability could be imagined. D-Bachan led everyone and didn't enter the tunnel in front of the mountain, but went all the way to the back. With their current strength, the monsters here couldn't help them improve at all. Chapter 2286. Let's go into this tunnel. D-Bachan said slowly. The demonic beasts in here are not as strong as us, but they are extremely fast. Everyone, let's get used to the environment here first, then we'll go deeper. Hearing D-Bachan's words, everyone nodded their heads. Along the way, they had seen many cultivators who were severely injured. Even if the other party's strength could not be compared to theirs, those shocking wounds were still imprinted in their hearts. If they did not experience it first, they could very well be seriously injured. The strongest will stand at the front and back of the group. The weaker ones will stand in the middle. Everyone, stay alert. Do not be distracted. The 4 strongest experts from the 4 palaces stood at the front and back of the group, while Bailey Hongzhuang stood behind D-Bachan. In reality, Xiao Feilin and the rest all thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was not weaker than theirs. To be able to injure Shen Xiuhan to such an extent, it was already proof of Bailey Hongzhuang's true strength. In the next moment, D-Bachan directly led the group into the tunnel. Their vision suddenly turned dark, and everyone could not help but squint their eyes to get used to the sudden change in light. In the tunnel, the ground was slippery and wet, and the sound of water dripping could be heard continuously, dripping down from the mountain rocks. Only when their feet stepped on the water could a slight sound be heard. It was empty and dead silent, and one could hear the echo of a sentence. Everyone gripped the weapons in their hands tightly, carefully looking around, hoping to get rid of the demonic beasts as soon as possible before they attacked. Although the vision of a cultivator was much better than that of an ordinary person, but in this pitch-black environment, they still could not see anything clearly. Suddenly, a sound like the wind rang out, and everyone's heart trembled. D-Bachan struck like lightning, and as a sword fell, the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground could be heard. Everyone was shocked. They had only felt a gust of air and did not even know what the attack was, but D-Bachan had already dealt with it. However, after seeing this scene, everyone then understood how difficult it was to train here. D-Bachan took out the demon crystal and handed it to Baishur, who was beside Bailey Hongzhuang. White Lion opened its mouth, and the demon crystal fell into its mouth. Instantly, crunching sounds could be heard. After eating, White Lion licked its lips, and its eyes lit up. "Master, this demon crystal tastes really good." White Lion was excited, and the energy contained in it is higher than ordinary demon crystals. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt that it was funny. The demon crystals that Baishur was eating now had all sorts of flavors. There are many demonic beasts here. You can have all the demonic crystals from the demonic beasts. You should try to break through again before the Battle of Zhuolu. Bailey Hongzhuang patted Baishur's head. Baishur's cultivation speed was incomparable to ordinary people. If there were enough demon crystals here, it would not be a problem for Baishur to increase his strength. "Master, I will." White Lion raised its head confidently. Xiao He and Xiao Bai had put away their playful thoughts and worked hard on their cultivation. By then, their strength would definitely increase by a lot. If its strength did not increase, wouldn't it lose to Xiao He and Xiao Bai? It did not want that. Everyone now knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast had always fed on demon crystals. Everyone was speechless at this point. Chapter 2287. Normal contracted beasts couldn't eat demon crystals when they were young, but when they reached a certain age, they could. However, the energy in the demon crystal was extremely rich. Once he ate a demon crystal, it would take a while for him to completely absorb it. Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast was obviously different. It ate demon crystals as if they were its meals, and it didn't have any intention of stopping. Everyone sighed at White Lion's perverse strength and at its prodigal behavior. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang spent a shocking amount of money to nurture White Lion to such a level. Suddenly, another soft sound appeared. Then, there was the sound of a knife being drawn from the back of the group. However, this speed wasn't as fast as Di Beichun, and it wasn't able to take the beast's life in that short period of time. In the blink of an eye, the beast had already disappeared. Xiao Feiyu, are you all right? I'm fine. Xiao Feiyu shook his head, but his voice was filled with depression. This demonic beast speed is too fast. We actually let it escape. Bailey Hongzhuang wrinkled her nose. She could smell the faint smell of blood in the air. It seemed that Xiao Feiyu was slightly injured by the beast's sneak attack. Everyone's expression changed when they saw that Xiao Feiyu couldn't subdue the beast. Xiao Feiyu was ranked in the top 5 in their group, but he still couldn't finish it off. It could be seen that the beast's speed was extraordinary. However, no matter how shocked everyone was, they didn't lose their footing because of this. They only became more vigilant and careful of their surroundings. Ding! Bailey Hongzhuang felt a fluctuation in the air, and the glazed sword in her hand quickly pierced out. As expected, the sword pierced through the body of a demonic beast, and Bai Shi had already started eating the second demonic crystal. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't just leave the beast's corpse behind. The beast's meat was so delicious that everyone could eat to their heart's content when they brought it back. Everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang silently kill the demonic beast, and their expressions couldn't help but change a bit. Bailey Hongzhuang was able to do something that Xiao Feiyu had never been able to do. This was truly amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. In her previous life, she had also undergone training in this area, so her reaction speed was definitely much faster than the average person. She no longer viewed herself as a teammate, but as a leader, so there was nothing to be happy about. Di Beichun's eyes were filled with astonishment because he realized that Bailey Hongzhuang's sword was even faster than his. It was obvious that her reaction speed was more agile than his. In the past, his master had specially brought him here to cultivate in order to improve his reaction speed. At that time, he had been cultivating here for a long time. From the beginning, his body was covered with injuries. Later on, it took him a long time to become independent. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction speed was clearly faster than his. The demonic beast continued to launch sneak attacks. In the process, everyone was also constantly adapting to the sneak attacks of the demonic beasts, increasing their ability to judge the situation. One after another, the demonic beasts fell at the hands of the group. However, there were also many people who were injured by the sneak attacks. The smell of blood in the air gradually intensified. There were demonic beasts, and there were also humans. Chapter 2288. When everyone saw that White Lion had a special liking for these demon crystals, they all gave their demon crystals to White Lion. Demon crystals were not of much use to them. Since White Lion needed them, they naturally gave them to White Lion. Bailey Hongzhuang thanked everyone for their good intentions, but did not reject them. White Lion's demand for demon crystals was indeed high. In the evening, everyone set off for the restaurant. However, compared to their high spirits when they had set off in the morning, they were clearly in a sorry state now. Everyone was covered in dust and bloodstains. Some of the wounds were so deep that their bones could be seen. However, everyone did not make a sound. As long as their injuries did not affect their movements, it was not a big deal. However, if you look carefully, you would find that except for Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, there were no injuries on their bodies. Everyone else had different degrees of injuries. Just from his point alone, one could see the difference in strength between everyone, at least in terms of agility. After returning to the restaurant, everyone handed the corpses of the demon beasts they had hunted to the shopkeeper so that he could make them a sumptuous dinner. The remaining ingredients were left to the shopkeeper. When the shopkeeper saw the number of demon beasts they had hunted, he was dumbfounded. There were many strong cultivators in the Bloodland Abyss, but it was extremely rare for Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest to kill so many demon beasts. Furthermore, from the species of the demon beasts, one could tell that their level was very high. They were definitely demon beasts that could only be found in the depths of the mountain. Seeing this, the shopkeeper's face was full of smiles. Not only did he not charge for the ingredients, even the room fee was completely saved. After a day of exhaustion, everyone was hungry and exhausted. Hence, the amount of demon beasts they had eaten was extremely terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang brought White Lion back to the house. White Lion immediately entered a state of cultivation. He had eaten a lot of demon crystals today. When he returned, he felt that the yuan power in his body was surging. He should have sat down long ago to absorb and digest. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's mind moved, and she immediately entered the stairway to heaven. Today could be said to be a high-intensity experience. The yuan power in her body had been depleted, and her mental power was also in a tense state. Under such circumstances, cultivating on the stairway to heaven for a while would allow him to improve at an extremely fast speed. Bailey Hongzhuang directly walked up to the highest level of the heaven stairway. Immediately, she felt that her entire body was enveloped by Yuan Li. As long as she circulated her cultivation technique, the Yuan Li would immediately be absorbed into her body. Bailey Hongzhuang's cells greedily absorbed the elemental energy, constantly strengthening Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian. Bailey Hongzhuang believed that with the help of this heaven stairway, her cultivation would definitely be able to catch up in these 3 months. For Di Beichen's training room to be able to achieve 4 times the amount of elemental energy was already an incredible existence. Even Lan Qinyan probably wouldn't have a training room with more elemental energy than this. As a result, she was blessed by the heavens to cultivate on the stairway to heaven. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest once again headed to the training ground to train. The scorching temperature caused everyone's clothes to be drenched in sweat. It was extremely uncomfortable to stick to their bodies. After Di Beichen considered everyone's strength, he decided to continue training at a place not far from yesterday's training ground. Everyone needed a certain amount of time to adapt. If the demon beasts were too strong, it would be even more disadvantageous for the cultivators who were heavily injured. Chapter 2289. After everyone had entered the tunnel, the monsters once again began their sneak attack. However, compared to yesterday's surprise attack, everyone's performance today was clearly much better. Even when faced with the monster's sneak attack, they remained calm and orderly. After eating so many demon crystals yesterday, White Lion had a breakthrough in the night, and his strength had increased by 1 level. After tasting the sweetness, White Lion was even more excited today. The energy provided by the demon crystals here was much stronger than that of ordinary demon crystals. Even the demon crystals in the desert world could not be compared to it. Not long after everyone had entered the tunnel, White Lion had changed its strategy. It no longer waited for the monsters to sneak attack, but began to take the initiative to attack. As a monster, its vision was not too affected here, so it could clearly see the situation of the monsters in the tunnel. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw White Lion's figure pounce forward and begin to kill the monsters, she followed closely behind. The monsters in the tunnel were not weak, and White Lion had no problem dealing with them alone. However, if the monsters attacked in groups, White Lion would be at a disadvantage. Everyone only felt that the environment in the tunnel had suddenly become complicated. The movements of the monsters were incessant, and the sound of White Lion gnawing on the demon crystals was exceptionally clear. When everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang, like Baisher, had taken the initiative to chase and kill the wicked beasts in the tunnel, they were speechless. As a human, It was impossible to see the surroundings clearly in such a dark environment. Being able to determine the specific location of the demonic beast through their perception and the movements of the demonic beast was already very difficult. However, Bailey Hongzhuang could actually take the initiative to kill the monsters in such a place. How terrifying was Bailey Hongzhuang's perception and reaction speed? Everyone found it hard to imagine. At least, they would definitely not be able to do it. When Di Beichun saw Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, he was also shocked by Bailey Hongzhuang's ability in this aspect. Back then, he had only seen his master do this. He did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be able to do it too. She was really amazing. In the following process, the crowd witnessed Bailey Hongzhuang and Baishi's terrifying fighting strength. This man and beast were simply hunting demons. Wherever they went, not a single demonic beast was left behind. Originally, the demonic beasts were still charging towards the group when they were attacked by Jingdong. However, after that, the group walked on peacefully while Bailey Hongzhuang and Baishi fought their way further and further away. Immediately, everyone's hearts that wanted to ruthlessly deal with the demonic beast collapsed. This man and beast were simply too abnormal. Now I know why Bailey Hongzhuang has such amazing combat strength at such a young age. It's all because of training. During the Battle of the Four Palaces, many people had already seen that Bailey Hongzhuang was not only powerful, but also had great endurance. Now that they saw Bailey Hongzhuang killing so many demonic beasts without showing the slightest sign of exhaustion, they finally understood. Di Beichun's face was filled with an indulgent and demonic smile. Bailey Hongzhuang was an existence that defied the natural order. This kind of style was very much in line with her personality. Under Bailey Hongzhuang and Baishi's sweeping, the group smoothly walked out of the tunnel as if they were taking a leisurely stroll. They had actually walked out of the tunnel so smoothly. Chapter 2290. The air was filled with the thick smell of blood, revealing the shocking number of demonic beasts that Bailey Hongzhuang and Baishi had killed. Bailey Hongzhuang had kept most of the demon crystals in the process of killing demonic beasts, leaving them for Baishi to eat at night. Yesterday, Baishi had eaten too many demon crystals, and on the way back, he could not control himself and was about to break through. In this training ground, demonic beasts were densely packed. The slightest carelessness could cause one to lose one's life. Not to mention, there was also the possibility of encountering other cultivators with ill intentions. Therefore, cultivating and absorbing here could be said to be very unwise. After exiting the tunnel, everyone looked at the spotless Bailey Hongzhuang and the snow-white furred Baishi. Other than labeling them as perverts, they did not know what else to say. Perverts. They were simply two perverts. My wife, for the rest of the training, why don't you and Baishi walk through another tunnel together? Di Beichun pondered for a moment before asking. With Bailey Hongzhuang's sharp senses, she did not need to go through the training here. At least, demonic beasts of this level would not be able to obstruct Bailey Hongzhuang and Baishi's footsteps. When everyone heard how Di Beichun addressed Bailey Hongzhuang, their gazes changed. They did not expect the young sect master to be so close to Bailey Hongzhuang that he had directly addressed her as his wife. This was really shocking. It looked like the young sect master and Bailey Hongzhuang would be getting married soon. In future, they should also address Bailey Hongzhuang as the young sect master's wife. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. All right, I'll go to another training ground with Baishi. She also felt that the training ground here was of no use to her. Now that she urgently needed to raise her cultivation level, she naturally had to go to a dangerous place where she could raise her strength. I'll go with you in a few days. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked past, Di Beichun's warm and caring voice entered her ears. Di Beichun had to be responsible for leading the team this time. At the very least, he could not leave until everyone had fully adapted to the training methods here. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a warm and beautiful smile. She nodded without leaving a trace before leaving with Baishi. Master, let's go on a killing spree. After Baishi left the group, he felt relaxed. There was no need to be restrained when dealing with these demonic beasts. Now that there was only him and his master, it was extremely convenient for him to move around. All right, the demonic beasts here aren't much of a challenge to us. Let's go a little deeper. White Lion naturally had no objections and obediently followed behind Bailey Hongzhuang. As a demonic beast, it also had a ruthless personality. No matter how special the demonic beasts here were, could they be as special as the Beast King? Next, Bailey Hongzhuang and White Lion began their cleaning work. The two of them moved as fast as lightning and swiftly hunted down the demonic beasts in the tunnel. As the number of demonic crystals increased, White Lion became more and more excited. At the same time, the demonic beast's power continued to increase. When the demonic beast's power reached a certain level, Bailey Hongzhuang and White Lion's advancement speed was slowed down. Bailey Hongzhuang treated the demonic beast as a training stone. She did not seek speed, only improvement. Chapter 2291. Xiao Feilin and the rest were stunned when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Baisher in such a state. For them to be in such a state, it was obvious that the tunnel they had entered was extremely dangerous. Bailey Hongzhuang had some scratches on her body that were so deep that her bones could be seen. However, Bailey Hongzhuang looked as if she was not injured at all. She greeted everyone with a smile and returned to her room to cultivate after dinner. Seeing this scene, everyone felt a sense of urgency in their hearts. Bailey Hongzhuang's hard work had obviously stimulated them. The next day, Di Baichen discovered that everyone seemed to have been injected with chicken blood during battle. Compared to their previous cautious attitude, they were now ready to go all out. In the following period of time, everyone repeated the same cycle of training and cultivation. During this process, everyone's strength was constantly increasing, and they no longer looked as inexperienced as before. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang had just walked into a tunnel when she heard faint voices coming from the front. Knowing that there were already people in this tunnel, Bailey Hongzhuang and Baisher decided to leave. There were many tunnels here, and there was no need to tangle with others. It was better to find another tunnel with no one around. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to leave, a word in the other party's words attracted Bailey Hongzhuang's attention. "Little fool, are you sure that there's a blood essence demon fruit in the depths of the blood-ground abyss?" "Big brother, I have received very reliable news." Back then, someone had seen the blood essence demon fruit. However, that person's strength was not strong enough, so he could only draw a map. After I received this news by chance, I snatched the map from that person's hands. As for that person, I killed him to silence him. Don't worry, it's definitely true. The blood essence demon fruit is a rare treasure. If we get the blood essence demon fruit, even if we don't consume it ourselves, we can still exchange it for many cultivation resources that we need. Blood essence demon fruit. When Bailey Hongzhuang heard this name, she stopped in her tracks. In order for Di Baichen's physique to transform into a heavenly mandate physique, he needed 4 types of medicinal herbs. Unfortunately, these 4 types of herbs were simply too rare. Up until now, they had only obtained the 9th grade purple Ganoderma. They had been painstakingly searching for the other herbs, but they couldn't find any useful information. She never thought that she would be able to obtain information about the blood essence demon fruit here. This was a pleasant surprise. Baisher naturally knew the significance of the blood essence demon fruit. He immediately slowed down and carefully followed behind the 3 with Bailey Hongzhuang. Although he still didn't know the strength of these 3 people, for them to be able to come to this level of tunnel, their strength was definitely not simple. If Bailey Hongzhuang's guess wasn't wrong, these people were even stronger than them. The Shengxian continent was vast and boundless, and the number of cultivators was even more astonishing. Even though most of the cultivators did not have a high cultivation, there were still many powerful people who could not be underestimated. There were many experts in the blood-ground abyss. It was just that they usually kept a low profile. Chapter 2292. Who's there? The cultivator who had been addressed as Big Brother immediately noticed the commotion and turned around to look at where Bailey Hongzhuang and Baisher were. "Who's behind us?" The man's face immediately tensed up. The information about the blood essence demon fruit was a secret. They had thought that no one else would appear here, so they did not have any qualms about speaking about it. However, The commotion behind them did not belong to them at all. It was also not the sound of a demonic beast. "Big brother, aren't you too nervous?" "I didn't hear anything," Little Fool said. The man shook his head and slowly walked toward where Bailey Hongzhuang and Bai Shi were. He had always been sensitive to sound, and no movement could escape his ears. The commotion just now was definitely out of the ordinary. Behind them, there was someone. Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked to see that this person was so sensitive. The other party's strength was unknown. If a fight broke out, it would not do them any good. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bai Shi escaped into the primordial chaos ring, completely hiding their figures. In the next second, after Bailey Hongzhuang and Bai Shi escaped into the chaos ring, the man had quickly appeared where Bailey Hongzhuang had been. The other two men quickly came behind the man and asked suspiciously, "Big brother, there's no one here." The big brother shook his head. His expression was firm and serious. "That's not right. There was definitely someone here before this. There's even some residual aura. However, it's only been a short period of time. The other party had actually disappeared so quickly. It looks like he's an expert." Seeing Peng Hong Yuan's serious attitude, Little Fool and Ah San's expressions turned ugly. If the other party was really an expert, then they might have been targeted. This was not good news. "Big brother, I don't think the situation is as serious as you think. If that person was really an expert, he would have attacked us long ago. Why would he run away? Most likely, he's not as strong as our cultivators. That's why he's doing this." Ah San's eyes flashed with a wise light. He had always been the team's brains. Hearing Ah San's words, the big brother and Little Fool exchanged glances. He was right. If they were really experts, they would have captured them and taken a map away. Even if that's the case, we still have to be extra careful. Once this news spreads, it won't do us any good. The boss's eyes were gloomy. "In my opinion, we should wait a few days before taking action. Let's observe the situation for now." "All right." After the three of them left the tunnel, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bai Shi came out of the chaos ring. I didn't expect that big brother's senses to be so sharp. I was already very careful before, but I was still discovered. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. Fortunately, she was able to see their faces when they approached. She had been keeping a close eye on these guys for the past few days. No matter what, the blood essence demon fruit was hers. "Master, what should we do now?" White Lion asked. "These people won't be moving for the next few days. Let's go back first and pay attention to which restaurant they're staying in or where they're staying." Chapter 2293. Bailey Hongzhuang followed the group, but realized that they had no intention of leaving. Instead, they continued to stay near the mountain peak. The three of them found a safe spot and sat down to cultivate. They did not look like they were going to go back. Bailey Hongzhuang followed them carefully from a distance. The leader of the group was far too sensitive. He would notice the slightest movement, so she had no choice but to stay far away. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang had already understood the thoughts of these people. They had purposely not gone back to the restaurant and had stayed here to escape her pursuit. If she were to follow them nearby, they would be able to detect her as soon as they moved a little. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh. They were indeed a group of incomparably experienced people. It would not be easy to escape their eyes. Based on the way they had searched for a place to stay, she could tell that they were a group of people who had gone through a lot of hardships. It was a good thing that she had a heaven-defying divine weapon like the Chaos Ring. The other party would not be able to detect her. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bai Shi stayed far away and did not pay attention to the other party's situation. If they stared at them for too long, they would attract the other party's attention. The boss surveyed his surroundings. He had specially brought Little Fool and Ah San to this place to catch the other party. A treasure like the blood essence demon fruit would not be given up on by any cultivator who knew about it. Hence, he was almost certain that the other party would be following them. If they had returned to the restaurant, the other party would hide in the crowd, and it would be too difficult to find them. However, in this environment, it would be much easier to find them. Little Fool, Ah San, you two stay here and cultivate. I'll take a look around. The boss surveyed his surroundings and analyzed where the other party could possibly appear. He must find the other party, or he would not be able to rest easy. Little fool, and Ah-san knew what the boss was thinking and nodded. The boss's investigative abilities were top-notch. As long as the other party was following them, the boss would definitely be able to find them. Bailey Hongzhuang paid close attention to the other party's movements. As soon as the situation seemed off, she would escape into the chaos ring. The other party would not be able to detect her presence. Sure enough, Boss searched the surrounding area, but didn't find any traces. He couldn't help but frown. This situation was a bit strange. Big brother, you didn't find anything? Seeing the boss come back with a frown, the waiter couldn't help but ask. Boss shook his head. That's strange. Could it be that my judgment was wrong? He had already searched all the possible hiding places, but he couldn't find any trace of them. It was really strange. Big brother, the other party might have mistakenly entered the tunnel and knew that we might kill them to silence them. So they quickly escaped. Let's stay here for a few days. The blood essence demon fruit is a precious treasure. We must be careful. It would be terrible if someone intercepted us. Big brother is right. Anyway, we have time. There's no need to rush. Ah-san nodded in agreement. Bailey Hongzhuang saw that these people had no intention of leaving, so she had no choice but to stay. The blood essence demon fruit was extremely important to Di Baichen, and he could not afford to lose it. Chapter 2294. The moon hung high in the sky as a cool breeze blew past. Di Baichen stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back, watching the passers-by below. His expression was unfathomable, and his eyes flickered with worry. Bailey Hongzhuang had been working separately from them for the past few days. Logically speaking, with Bailey Hongzhuang's strength and the power of the Chaos Ring, it was impossible for Bailey Hongzhuang to be in any danger. It was because he knew about the power of the Chaos Ring that he was reassured to let Bailey Hongzhuang train in other tunnels. However, it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang had returned a little too late today. In the next moment, Di Baichen's figure flashed, and he jumped down from the window's sill. His figure then quickly disappeared into the crowd. Bailey Hongzhuang stood quietly by the side and could vaguely hear the movements of the three people. The leader of the group was indeed an extremely cautious person. Even after confirming that there was no one else around, he still checked left and right many times. It was only when the night had deepened that he sat down to cultivate. Master, we'll keep watch over these three people. If we don't go back tonight, Di Baichen will be worried. Baisher said telepathically. Bailey Hongzhuang's bright eyes flashed with a trace of emotion. There's nothing we can do now. We can only wait here. She knew that Di Baichen would be worried. However, if they missed out on these people today, it would be difficult to find them again. There were many mountains here, and it was impossible to find the three people hiding among them. Moreover, these tunnels were full of twists and turns. It was no different from looking for a needle in a haystack. Baisher nodded. Master's words made sense. This blood essence demon fruit only appeared once in a blue moon, and the environment was extremely strange. If they missed it this time, they might not have the chance to see it again for many years. The light turned from dark to bright, and Bailey Hongzhuang peeked out to see that the three people had continued to cultivate after eating some rations. It seemed that they had no intention of leaving today. Bailey Hongzhuang was a very patient person. She had already made up her mind that she would keep watch for as long as these people stayed here. Based on her experience, these people would stay here for at most a few days and not much longer. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang also entered a state of cultivation, and Baisher was in charge of keeping watch. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Night's curtain once again fell upon the earth, and the entire mountain peak was covered in a veil of night. Bailey Hongzhuang thought that these three people's minds. Just as she was about to cultivate, she saw that the three people suddenly stood up and looked around. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly hid her figure. She didn't expect that these people would be preparing to leave at night. Boss, there's really no one around here. Even if that guy wanted to go back and find people to surround us, we've stayed here for 3 days. It's impossible for him to find us again. Because of this small possibility, they had stayed here for so long. In the wilderness, it was hot and dry, and they could only eat rations. It was really unpleasant. It's better to be safe than sorry. Ah-san said, let's go. The boss's face darkened. Little Air had always had a grumbling temper, and he had long been used to it. Chapter 2295. Bailey Hongzhuang followed behind the three and found that they were getting more and more secluded. They would stop and study the map in their hand from time to time. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that the three of them were planning to take advantage of the night to get the blood essence demon fruit. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but feel excited. However, her worries were also growing. There were three of them, and the strongest of them was probably at Green Realm level 8. Even if she and Baishur worked together, it would be very difficult to deal with the three of them. The only way was to sneak an attack when they were unprepared. Only then would she be able to come into contact with the blood essence demon fruit. However, once she snatched the blood essence demon fruit, the other party would be the first to discover it. Even if she had the chaos ring, she could not escape in front of them. Therefore, this matter was still difficult. If she was not careful, she would be seriously injured or even killed. Master, with just our strength, this matter is a little difficult to handle. Baishur naturally found the problem. Its cultivation was only at Green Realm level 4, and its master was also at Green Realm level 4. The other party was a Green Realm level 8 expert. Even if its master could fight above her level, the other party had the advantage of numbers. The difference in strength was too great. Bailey Hongzhuang pursed her red lips, and her eyes were deep and complicated. We can only take one step at a time. If there is a chance, don't hesitate. From the conversation she had overheard earlier, she already knew that they were planning to leave the Bloodground Abyss from another direction after obtaining the Blood Essence Demon Fruit. This way, she would not be able to contact Di Baichon to surround them. Once they left, she would not be able to share the Blood Essence Demon Fruit with them. Baishur nodded. The Blood Essence Demon Fruit was a must, and they would have to fight for it later. As the three of them went further and further, Bailey Hongzhuang helplessly found that the mountain was constantly expanding. Without a place to hide, Bailey Hongzhuang could only increase the distance between them. This was the only way to ensure that they would not be discovered. However, the closer they got to the back, the stronger the monsters were. Even if they didn't walk through the tunnel, there would still be some demonic beasts coming out to ambush them. Under such circumstances, the distance between Bailey Hongzhuang and the three of them grew further and further. The demonic beasts here weren't the same as before, where she could deal with them with just a slight move. Once she encountered one, it would be a fight, and the other party would definitely discover her existence. Originally, he wanted the white lion to release its aura so that the surrounding demonic beasts would not dare to disturb them. However, as the white lion grew stronger, the aura became more and more powerful. Once the white lion released its aura, these demonic beasts would submit to it. The commotion would be even greater. Not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but the other three were also facing attacks from demonic beasts. Therefore, everyone's speed was not fast. Suddenly, a mystical beast appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Baishur. It pounced towards Bailey Hongzhuang without hesitation. The mystical beast's body was huge, and its power was at the green state. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly drew her colored glazed sword and attacked the mystical beast. The mystical beasts here were extremely fast. Bailey Hongzhuang's attack had pierced through the mystical beast's body. The mystical beast immediately realized that it was no match for Bailey Hongzhuang and immediately charged forward. Chapter 2296. The direction in which the demonic beast had fled was exactly where the three of them were. Once the three of them saw the wound on the demonic beast's body, they would discover that it was caused by a sharp sword and would immediately suspect that there was someone behind them. Bailey Hongzhuang had wanted to chase after the demonic beast and get rid of it, but the demonic beast was too fast. If she were to chase after it, she would definitely be discovered by the other party, and that would be terrible. After knowing that the other party would definitely discover her, Bailey Hongzhuang could only retreat quickly. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had retreated, the three of them had indeed discovered the wound on the demonic beast's body. After the three of them had quickly subdued the demonic beast, they discovered the wound on its body and could not help but exclaim, "This sword wound had clearly appeared not too long ago. It wasn't caused by us." The leader's face instantly turned gloomy. It seems that my previous judgment was not wrong. Indeed, someone was following us. At this moment, it wasn't just the leader, even Xiao and Ah-San's faces had turned extremely ugly. They had been extremely cautious along the way, but they never thought that they would still be followed. It seems that the other party's ability to follow them was extraordinarily powerful. They had checked so many places over the past few days, yet they had not found a single clue. What kind of method was this? Who's following us? Come out now. The leader shouted coldly. The three of them could not help but feel a lingering fear. If it had not been for the fact that the demonic beast had run over, they would have led the other party all the way to the blood essence demon fruit. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally could not come out. No matter what, she could not allow the other party to discover her whereabouts. Otherwise, if she were to be surrounded and attacked, that would be terrible. The other party was obviously angry to the extreme and immediately flew over. Bailey Hongzhuang was constantly looking for a nearby hiding place. She was different from the other party. She couldn't move too much, otherwise she would be directly discovered by the other party. The leader was very sharp and very quickly. He had arrived at the place where Bailey Hongzhuang had fought with the demonic beast. His face was as gloomy as water. In the next moment, the leader had followed Bailey Hongzhuang's aura and quickly chased after her. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang secretly sighed. This was not good. She was afraid that she could only hide in the chaos ring. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to dodge, a large hand suddenly grabbed her. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart skipped a beat. Before she could see who the other party was, she was pulled into a tunnel and hid. Boss quickly arrived at the spot where Bailey Hongzhuang had been standing and frowned. Damn it, this is the aura I felt 3 days ago. That guy's been following us for so long. Boss, this fellow has been following us without revealing himself. He shouldn't be as strong as us, little fool said slowly. The other party probably wants to contact someone, but they're afraid that they won't be able to find us, so they've been following us, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Ah-San's eyes flashed with wisdom. If the other party was strong enough, then that demonic beast wouldn't have had the chance to escape. The boss nodded. It's impossible for the other party to leave so quickly. Let's quickly find the other party. Once this news gets out, we'll be in trouble. No cultivator would give up on a treasure like the blood essence demon fruit. Chapter 2297. Bailey Hongzhuang held her breath. The other party's tracking method was really too amazing. It was amazing. Her tracking technique and concealing ability had always been good. Even if the other party's strength was several levels higher than hers, she was confident that she would not be discovered by the other party. However, this leader clearly had a special talent in this area. Fortunately, this tunnel was mixed with the aura of many monsters. It was able to completely cover her aura. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around to look at the person beside her, only to see Di Beichen looking at her with a worried and somewhat reproachful expression. Seeing Di Beichen, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips could not help but curl up into a happy smile. On the way here, she had hoped to be able to contact Di Beichen, but unfortunately, she never had the chance. She did not expect that Di Beichen would actually appear by her side at this moment. Although she could not help but want to speak, the current environment was really not suitable for talking. After the three of them went ahead to search for Bailey Hongzhuang's figure, Bailey Hongzhuang was pleasantly surprised and said, Beichen, how did you know I was here? Di Beichen saw Bailey Hongzhuang so happy to see him. The anger that was originally brewing in his heart disappeared in an instant. In this life, he was completely lost in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang. He could not even scold her. Wife, you didn't come back. Do you know how worried I was? Bailey Hongzhuang stuck out her tongue. Her expression was a bit innocent and apologetic. I know you will be worried, but I really can't go back. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's extremely cute appearance, Di Beichen could not help but feel his heart flutter. He was somewhat unable to restrain himself. If it was not for the unsuitable environment, he would have already kissed her. Why are you following them? Di Beichen's voice was a bit hoarse. His expression was dyed with a serious expression. Based on his understanding of Hongzhuang, If it wasn't something very important, Hong Zhuang wouldn't stay here all the time. Hearing this, Bailey Hong Zhuang couldn't help but hold Di Beichun's hand tightly. Her delicate face was filled with excitement. Beichun, these people said that there are blood essence demon fruits in the depths of the Bloodgrave Abyss. They have a map in their hands and are preparing to search for them. I've been following them, wanting to know the whereabouts of the blood essence demon fruit. However, they are too cautious. Just now, a demon beast suddenly appeared, and I was accidentally discovered. With Bailey Hong Zhuang's words, Di Beichun felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly chiseled by someone. An indescribable warmth and emotion spread throughout his heart. Bailey Hong Zhuang was nowhere to be seen for several days, and her clothes were in a mess. He knew that Hong Zhuang was a person who loved cleanliness. Every day, after cultivating, she would go back to freshen up. However, she had been following these people for his sake. All of this was for his sake. Wife, these people are very powerful. It's too risky for you to follow them. Di Beichun held Bailey Hong Zhuang's hand, his eyes filled with heartache. Even though it was just a casual glance, he already understood that these three people's battle prowess was beyond what Hong Zhuang and Bai Shi could handle. Chapter 2298. Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyes, which were as bright as the stars. Normally, most things would not be able to attract Bailey Hong Zhuang's attention. Now, Bailey Hong Zhuang was so agitated and worried because of the change in his physique. Thinking back to the time when Bailey Hong Zhuang had helped him treat his legs, Bailey Hong Zhuang had a reluctant look on her face. But now, she was a little woman who was completely considerate of him, and he couldn't help but feel happy. Back then, he had not given Bailey Hong Zhuang the chance to leave. Now, with her by his side, this was a complete world. Beichun, they've already gone far away. Let's follow them. There are many mountain tunnels here. If we don't keep an eye on them, we won't be able to find them. With that, Bailey Hong Zhuang pulled Di Beichun and prepared to leave. She had been following them for so long. She could not give up halfway like this. However, just as Bailey Hong Zhuang was about to leave, she suddenly felt a force. Bailey Hong Zhuang turned around and threw herself into Di Beichun's arms. Bailey Hong Zhuang was slightly startled. She raised her head from the wide embrace and immediately met Di Beichun's deep and affectionate eyes. Beichun, without waiting for Bailey Hong Zhuang to speak, Di Beichun's hot lips had already kissed Bailey Hong Zhuang's pink lips. Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyes instantly widened. She looked at Di Beichun in astonishment. Di Beichun's kiss was hot and domineering. His right hand covered the back of Bailey Hong Zhuang's head. His tongue quickly attacked, not giving Bailey Hong Zhuang any chance to escape. He had been longing for her lips for a long time. It was just that he had been with everyone in the team for the past few days and did not have much opportunity to interact with Hong Zhuang. No matter what, he hadn't married Hong Zhuang yet. If he entered Hong Zhuang's room at night, it would undoubtedly damage her reputation. He would never do anything to hurt Hong Zhuang. Even if he was going to marry Hong Zhuang, he couldn't let people talk about him again. Bailey Hong Zhuang slowly closed her eyes and responded to Di Beichun's kiss. She also missed him, missed his embrace, missed his warmth, missed everything about him. She had long been used to Di Beichun being by her side, used to his warm words, occasional hugs, and unexpected kisses. Di Beichun let go of Bailey Hong Zhuang after he had absorbed enough of the sweetness. He looked at her flushed face, and his lips curled into a wicked smile. My wife is still so shy. Hearing this, Bailey Hong Zhuang's face turned even redder. She punched Di Beichun on the shoulder. You're so bad. She didn't know what was going on either. Every time Di Beichun kissed her, she couldn't help but blush. She only felt that she was too useless. Looking at Bailey Hong Zhuang's bashful look, Di Beichun felt even happier. He ignored Bailey Hong Zhuang's weak punches and pulled her into his arms. My wife, I love you. His warm breath blew into Bailey Hong Zhuang's ear. Di Beichun's deep and charming voice clearly traveled into Bailey Hong Zhuang's ears. Looking at Bailey Hong Zhuang, who was so considerate of him, Di Beichun only felt that with a wife like this, what more could he ask for? Bailey Hong Zhuang, who was originally struggling, became limp after hearing Di Beichun's words. She quietly leaned on Di Beichen's chest and said in a muffled voice, "Me too." Chapter 2299. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had left the cave, they chased after the trio. Previously, the three of them had searched everywhere for Bailey Hongzhuang. However, they had not been able to find any trace of her, so they could only leave quickly. Now that they had been delayed by Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang, by the time they emerged from the tunnel, the three of them had set off once again. Based on their judgment, Bailey Hongzhuang's powers could not be compared to theirs. She had only been following behind them to find an opportunity to fish in troubled waters. Now that they had been discovered, Bailey Hongzhuang must have been scared out of her wits and had quickly left. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had followed the trio's aura and quickly chased after them. Initially, it would not have been easy for Bailey Hongzhuang and Bai Shi to deal with the trio based on their powers. However, with the addition of Di Beichun, this problem was easily solved. Even if they had been discovered, they were not afraid at all. A moment later, Bailey Hongzhuang caught sight of the three figures once again. Compared to before, the three figures were undoubtedly more cautious. Even their speed was constantly increasing. Clearly, they wanted to use this method to completely shake off their pursuers. "Wife, can the blood essence demon fruit grow in an environment like this?" Di Beichun walked as if he was taking a leisurely stroll in a courtyard. He was calm and natural. Even though he was following them, he looked as if he had a card up his sleeve. Prior to this, he had spent a great deal of effort to find out more about the blood essence demon fruit. However, this item was simply too rare and no one had been able to preserve it. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment before replying, "It's possible. The blood essence demon fruit grows in extremely hot places and the conditions for its growth are very harsh. However, there's magma here. Who knows, it might just meet the conditions for the blood essence demon fruit to grow." A treasure like the blood essence demon fruit could only be found by chance. Not every environment like this could produce the blood essence demon fruit. Otherwise, the blood essence demon fruit would not be so rare. Now, as they got closer and closer to the rear, the temperature became hotter and hotter, and the environment became more and more suitable. It was precisely because of this that Bailey Hongzhuang believed that these three people's words were not groundless. Hearing this, Di Beichun's deep eyes flashed as bright as the stars. Under the control of Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills, it was now possible to ensure that his leg injury would not act up again. However, if there was a chance to completely change his physique, that would undoubtedly be the best. "We're already at the back of the blood-ground abyss. It's not too far ahead, so we should be arriving soon," Di Beichun said in a deep voice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. The three people in front of her had already stopped and were studying the map in their hands. "Boss, the map shows that the blood essence demon fruit is on the mountain in front of us." Little Fool looked at the map in his hand and compared it with the mountain in front of him. His expression was firm and serious. "All right," Boss revealed a satisfied expression. "That guy probably went back to get reinforcements. We'll take the blood essence demon fruit tonight to avoid any more trouble." "Boss, this blood essence demon fruit is guarded by an extremely powerful guardian beast. We have to be careful if we want to obtain the blood essence demon fruit. We've been preparing for so long. There must be a way to deal with that red flame lion king." Chapter 2300. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's expressions changed when they heard the name of the lion. The red flame lion was as powerful as a level 1 blue realm cultivator. It was a dominating beast that was extremely difficult to defeat. "I didn't think there would be a red flame lion here. This will be a tough battle." Her dark eyes were shining with surprise. She had only seen the red flame lion once. She didn't think she would have the chance to see it today. "Wife, it seems like we have to lower our status today." Di Beichun's lips curled into a devilish grin. He raised an eyebrow and stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. Looking at this smile, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood, and her smile became a bit more sly. "Do we count as a pair of thieves?" "Ha!" Di Beichun could not help but laugh out loud. His clear and bright eyes were like stars in the dark night, shining brightly, bright and dazzling. Looking at such a pair of eyes, shining like a river of stars, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt her heart thump. Even though she had been with Di Beichun for so long, his charm was still irresistible. Wife, if you stare at me like that, I won't be able to hold myself back. Di Beichun suddenly leaned close to Bailey Hongzhuang and said in a flirtatious tone. Bailey Hongzhuang froze. She lowered her head and said, I didn't. However, she couldn't help but sound guilty. Di Beichun chuckled, but didn't expose her. He grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand. A male and female thief is a male and female thief. Today, we're going to steal it. After watching the three of them climb up the mountain, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun weren't in a hurry. They stopped at the foot of the mountain. The Red Flame Lion King was an extremely difficult demonic beast to deal with. Once a demonic beast reached this level, it would have gained intelligence. Even if it was not as smart as a human, it was not far off. Previously, they had already asked White Lion about this, and White Lion had given them an affirmative answer. That was, the Red Flame Lion King really did exist on this mountain peak. As such, the three of them would have to expend quite a bit of effort to defeat the Red Flame Lion King. If they went up immediately, they might be mistaken as one of the Red Flame Lion King's allies. There was no need to waste their energy for nothing. After relaxing, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun with a big smile. Beichun, how did you find me in such a big place? Originally, she thought that it would be impossible for Di Beichun to find her, because this place was too big and the terrain was too complicated. Ever since you didn't come back last night, I've been looking for you. Fortunately, I finally found you. Di Beichun's voice was full of helplessness and love. This place was too big. He had to search for 3 days and 3 nights before he finally found Bailey Hongzhuang. However, the moment he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was safe and sound, he was relieved. So you've been looking for me for a few days? Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked. What about the team? Who asked my wife to run around so much? How can I be at ease if I don't find you? Di Beichun reached out his hand and stroked Bailey Hongzhuang's nose. The love in his eyes was enough to melt ice. I've already talked to Xiao Feilin. He will lead the team for the next few days. After a few days of training, everyone's adaptability has improved. I was planning to train with you on the second day and let them train on their own. Chapter 23:01. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were talking, the sounds of fighting could be heard from the mountain peak. This place was at the back of the Bloodground Abyss. Hence, there were very few people and even few demonic beasts around. Hearing the sounds, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. The other party had already started fighting. Master, let's go up and take a look, White Lion suggested. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. The Red Flame Lion King had already taken the 3 of them as its opponents. All they needed to do was to find a place to hide. In the next moment, the 2 of them and the Red Flame Lion King headed up the mountain peak. The closer they got, the more they could feel the shock waves from the battle. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest could see the battle clearly. The Red Flame Lion King was like a divine beast of flames. Its body was red and its expression was ferocious. At this moment, the Red Flame Lion King was fighting furiously with the 3 people who wanted to steal its fruit. It had guarded the blood essence demon fruit for so long and had been safe and sound. As the blood essence demon fruit ripened, it became happier and happier. Once it consumed the ripened blood essence demon fruit, its strength would increase exponentially and it would undergo a complete transformation. It even felt that it might have the chance to transform into a human in the future. Not long ago, a group of people had tried to steal the blood essence demon fruit. They had been killed by the Red Flame Lion King, and only one of them had managed to escape. It did not expect that there would be more people coming now. Furthermore, these people were much stronger than the previous group. This was troublesome. Boss, this Red Flame Lion King has been guarding the blood essence demon fruit for so long. It has absorbed the essence of the blood essence demon fruit. Its strength is extraordinary. Little Fool had already been injured in the battle with the Red Flame Lion King. His face was pale. Even though he already knew that the Red Flame Lion King was extremely powerful, it was only now that he realized that it was even more powerful than he had imagined. Even if the three of them worked together, they might not be a match for the Red Flame Lion King. This was really bad. Big Brother and Asan's faces were also very ugly. They had just seen the almost ripe blood essence demon fruit, but before they could even pick it, the Red Flame Lion King had already attacked. Now that the Red Flame Lion King was staring at them, there was no way they could make a move. The only way was to kill the Red Flame Lion King. That was the only way to get the blood essence demon fruit. However, how difficult was this? Bailey Hongzhuang sniffed the faint medicinal fragrance in the air, and her eyes suddenly brightened. Beichun, the blood essence demon fruit, is about to ripen. She had always been very familiar with medicinal herbs. Just by asking about the fragrance, she could tell that it was a coincidence. She didn't expect their luck to be so good this time. They didn't get the blood essence demon fruit? Di Beichun's nose was not as sensitive as Bailey Hongzhuang's. He could only smell the faint smell of blood in the air, but he could not detect the medicinal fragrance at all. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and analyzed. I'm afraid that the Red Flame Lion King came too quickly and they didn't make it in time. However, this is a good opportunity for us. While the Red Flame Lion King is fighting with the three of them, we can quickly pick the blood essence demon fruit and leave.